Haditha Dam controls the water flow and the electricity into Baghdad. And that key piece of terrain needed to be taken because there were thoughts that in Saddam Hussein's way to delay an armored attack would be to flood the valley. So our job was to go seize it. As the dam approaches, it's pretty bright, but really couldn't tell how much it was defended. The first vehicles, they just fly right through. The other platoon, they take care of a few people guarding the west side of the dam. I go to move my vehicle up with Bravo Company on the west side. During this time, the transmission goes out and starts smoking. I'm lucky that I had a mechanic with me. He starts working on the vehicle, and we just start hearing pop, 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 and some explosions. And Charlie Company our platoon is in the thick of it, and they just kill everybody. They do a wonderful job. They seize that objective. We think, okay, we're good, this is secure. The sun comes up, I take my vehicle, which has now been fixed, to go, consolidate with them. And as we go down the road, we get an ambush on both sides of the vehicle. Well, that was another barracks that hadn't been cleared yet. The whole place was full of Iraqis. But that ambush, I had a decision to make, and this is an interesting decision.
When hunting isn't about hunting at all. Team Dog features comprehensive and customizable meal plans with dry and raw food options to meet your dog's unique nutritional needs, including digestive sensitivities, allergies, or selective eating. Did you know combining 75% dry food with 25% raw food delivers robust, nutrient-dense meals for your dog? Be your dog's hero with Team Dog. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's both an honor and a pleasure to welcome my next guest to the podcast. He served 12 years in the U.S. Special Operations Command, including 9 years in the 75th Ranger Regiment, serving in 3rd Ranger Battalion, where he participated in the regiment's historic combat parachute assault into Afghanistan after 9/11 and then later into Iraq. Completed 8 combat deployments in support of the global war on terror. 2024 Ranger Hall of Fame inductee. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Tony Mayne.
Great to be here. Thanks for the opportunity to tell the story.
Yeah, thanks for coming. I appreciate it. I know the trip here was a little tumultuous, but you made it, and we're glad to have you. If you could, take me back to the night of October 19th, 2001. You're standing in the door of a C-17, about to become one of the first U.S. Rangers to parachute into Afghanistan after 9/11. What's going through your mind? If you ride, you already know it only takes a second for things to go wrong out there. Often riders don't realize it only takes one drink to change your whole life. Alcohol slows your reaction time, throws off your balance, and gives you a false sense of confidence. That combination on a motorcycle, it's dangerous. Here's the bottom line. If you hit the bottle, don't roll the throttle. Plan ahead, ride with a clear head, call a ride, stay over, or hand the keys to someone sober. Because if you don't, you're not just risking your life, ride sober or get pulled over. Paid for by NHTSA.
I will tell you, wow, a loaded question right there. Vengeance, retribution, hope, fear, all of those emotions all mixed together. You have about a 3.5, 4 hour plane ride, less than comfortable, of course, the way we do it with mass TAC, airborne assaults. But really, Mike, it's the lead up. Right, September 11th happens. We know we're going to the show. We know we're doing something. So it's all about don't mess it up at that point. I was a team leader at the time, so I had Rangers under my charge, so I had to perform for them. But there was a time after, we say the Ranger Creed before every combat operation. I think it's about the 10-minute mark or so that still gives us time to check our equipment, do our things for the jump. And I've had the opportunity to do 2 of them, which is an absolute blessing. And after you do that, I mean, it is just straight, get me out the door. 4 hours of wearing your gear rigged up. All right, we're not flying from super high and can do it in the air, right? Like we are rigged up, ready to go. And man, it is just like, let's get down to business for sure.
I mean, I can only imagine. I know, that kind of pre-operation cottonmouth, calm before the storm feeling is unlike anything else. Did you feel the gravity of that mission from kind of the sense or the air in the room from any of the other guys? Like, was there kind of that unspoken feeling? Was there anybody that was nervous or second guessing, apprehensive, anything like that? Or was everybody kind of collectively on the same page?
From our forward staging base, when you look at who was there in the soft community, specifically in the Ranger Regiment, what you had was a lot of people who hadn't led in combat. Those that had, it had been a while. Maybe you had a Somalia Ranger or two, and we were blessed in Charlie Company 375 to have Rob Phipps, who's an absolute Ranger legend, he had Velcro on his uniform. Like, that was unauthorized, but he put Velcro on. I mean, this is a Ranger Regiment. This is the high and tight days, right?
Oh, yeah.
And we just didn't have that experience to lean back on. And, almost, 25 years ago now, the gravity of the situation, man, I wish America on 9/11, 2026 could feel the gravity of the situation.
Yeah.
The threat has not gone. It will never go away. However, at that time, we were keenly aware, and we were also aware that everybody was watching. And as special operators, we don't think about it after all the deployments. You'll go on rotations where you'll have 10s, 20s, 30s, maybe hundreds of missions, depending if you were in, Iraq just striking targets all the time. But at that time, like, that was the centerpiece, and it was don't F it up, do it well so we can keep on getting used again. Yeah. So it's just a different mindset. There was nervousness top down, and I think that's okay. Being nervous, right, keeps you on edge for sure.
I mean, did you realize at that point, standing in the aircraft, that you're about to become part of history, or was there
100%?
Yeah,
100%. And I don't say that I don't say that glowingly. It's just that when we look at the history of the Ranger Regiment and Rangers, and I won't go through all of that right now, but I will tell you, our heroes, Somalia. Right, 24 hours plus, right? And we know that there were a lot of operations that happened prior, but I mean, when we're talking about the fight, Panama, Grenada, the history of the modern Ranger Regiment up until that point was not what we currently see. Or now we think, if we're going somewhere, we're going to be almost battle space owners. Like, that was never a thought.
Yeah.
So part of the idea of the operation, in our minds, we had no idea what would happen in the next 20 years.
Right.
So that's why there's a part, like, don't mess it up. You mess it up, you don't get another opportunity. They'll find somebody else.
Right.
Right. And so that was a lot for us.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, if you look at the kind of collective experience that is the airborne Rangers historically, post World War II, or I would say World War II is really the last time that they were used over and over, or a number of times kind of in the same campaign. And it's an interesting dichotomy, I think, in that's kind of the bread and butter, or what Rangers are kind of the most known for, again, historically. But if you think about the entire history of that as a unit, there's, snapshots almost once per generation where they're actually used in that capacity, and the rest of it is more special operations, kind of normal direct assault raids, et cetera. So, the handful of guys that were in that position, yourself included, I mean, it's got to be such a huge honor to take part in a combat jump as a Ranger.
It's just a blessing to be able to be there. But when you talk about, I think what keeps us going is the people. Right. It's the people. We know we're part of that tradition. We never want to let it down. In my, I'll do another combat jump a couple of years later. Like in that platoon, 4 squad leaders, 2 of my peers, I would never call them peers in like quality of rangering, become regimental sergeant majors. That company, Charlie Company 375, led by Shawn Daniel, has produced more regimental and battalion sergeant majors in the last decade. So when you talk about the weight of that event, it's an opportunity, right? Don't jack it up.
Yeah.
And it becomes an opportunity because now you walk around with a mustard stain. Mm-hmm. And you didn't see too many mustard stains, and now you don't see too many folks on active duty anymore because the special missions units, of course, will not wear theirs generally, okay, and which makes total sense. And so it goes by like that. So you got to take your opportunity. You got to strike when you can, for sure.
For the uninitiated, can you explain the mustard stain?
So the mustard stain would be the Army decoration or device on top of airborne wings to designate a combat jump.
Yeah. People remember the towers falling. Very few know what America's first Ranger assault into Afghanistan actually looked like. Can you walk us through that night?
Through the night, oh my gosh, I can walk you through all of it. I mean, talk about waiting. So if I can go all the way back, September 11th happens, and personally, so I was in our Army's school for sergeants, right? So we go from an E4 to an E5 specialist or corporal to sergeant. And on 9/11, I was inside a classroom at Fort Benning. That sergeant's class was made up of all MOSs. We had everybody across Fort Benning. Third ID was there. We had supply folks. We had folks from basic training, and a bunch of Rangers. And we're getting a class on how to PMCS, preventative maintenance, for vehicles. An E7 comes in, which is a senior cadre for that school, and says, there's been a plane run into one of the towers in New York. We're going to keep you updated. And looking back, I appreciated that they didn't wait because they already working the contingency plan of notifying soldiers to find out who has family in the area. And then a few moments later, same NCO comes in and says, there's been an attack. The second towers are down. We need to know if you have family in New York City. So at that time, with 2 TVs above us, we thought it would be a good idea to watch. And we were told by our instructor for the PMCS of vehicles classes that what's happening in New York was important, but we would use this PMCS class throughout the rest of our military career. So didn't quite get it. So a few of us Rangers did 100% the wrong thing and against all traditional OPSEC. The moment we had a class break, we ran to the payphones. For those watching who are younger, a payphone is a phone where you put inside metal money, and then that metal money allows you to dial a call. So our stupid butts went ahead and called back to CQ, where we were instructed to get off the line immediately. So 9/11 happens. So we're trying to get information, my folks who are locked down. But I know our battalion is currently the battalion on cycle to deploy. And this is September 11th. So when you go all the way to October 19th, kind of the why. Well, America had to set up the staging bases. It had to make a plan for what it wanted to do, how it was going to do it. And we work at night. And so we had to get in when we had the right moon phase, right? Like that was all a part of it. And our leaders, as well as they could, kept us informed of all that stuff going on. So we're at the staging base, I gotta say, for a couple of weeks before. And so we know the target, we rehearse the target, but we're really in a constrained environment, right? Our really last full-size rehearsal that wasn't a walk-through mock-up was the day we graduated PLDC my squad leader came to the auditorium, had my Kevlar helmet, and once again, for those that are watching, you see very light helmets that everybody wears. They used to be a lot less comfortable, and my LBE, load bearing equipment, and we went out to a drop zone right outside of the Georgia side and the Alabama side of Fort Benning, and we conducted that rehearsal. But it would take several more weeks before we executed, so it was just pent up. You're sleeping on cots. CBs did the best they could, right? You know, building up. The advanced element that does all the building for SOF did a great job trying to get us AC, all that. But like, you're spending weeks just like in those old school tents before everything, and all you have to do is you're just waiting on the word. And then you start wondering, I was a sergeant at the time, how much are they really telling us? Would I tell me what's going to happen? You know what I mean? Like you just start going like, what will be the day? What will be the day? And I don't think it was until a couple of days out that most of us knew what the actual date would be, which makes total sense for operational security when you look at who comprises the Ranger Regiment, everybody from a private up to a full bird colonel, right? So we kind of treat our OPSEC, but there wasn't a ton we could do other than talk throughs and just rock drill after rock drill of what we would do, and then contingency plans. And then, you know, anytime you have a jump our size, the manifest just slightly changing. Just like, do we need, you know, I used to call officers antennas because you just see their antennas. You know, back in the day before we had different comms and you could only see their antennas, like another antenna's getting on the manifest, another antenna, like, hey, we're losing a shooter, you know? So then you have that whole, like, we can't lose a shooter on the ground. We can't lose a shooter for command and control. And finally, once we found out, okay, that like about 2 days out when it was going to happen, that was all to get our sleep cycle right and to get our hydration right. And like we were on lockdown. I remember rigging up for that mission was probably, looking back, one of the coolest things in the military. Just locking eyes with your peers, right? Having your false sense of bravado for your younger Rangers, right? Looking at your peers to be like, this is what we signed up for. And then looking at your leaders with, we got this. It was amazing. And we loaded, I believe it was 6 C-130s, right? So, and I mean, it was hot and it was packed. So you've been hydrating for 2 straight days. And there's some great pictures that are in the history book showing Rangers loading up for that jump. But we were heavy. I think we had 2 femurs broken on that jump once we got on the drop zone, because you just didn't know. You had no idea what was going to happen. What if we lost the moon and it became day and we had to do a remain over day? We had no idea. So we were heavy. That walk to the bird was horrendous. It was a great night if you were a jump master. So at least because you get to go out first in combat, right? Like that's the best thing about being a jump master for a static line. Like you get to go out first, but they also got to carry their equipment in flight rig. That was a blessing for those guys. Not so much for the rest of us, but man, it was something. We load the birds. It's just hot as hell. Like by the end of the trip, it was like, get me the heck out of here. But it was just horrendous. But it is what it is. That's what you sign up for. That's what you pay for.
6 C-130s. How many of you are there total?
So we had 160. I think we had 160 on the dot on that jump.
Okay.
Yeah.
So super hot. You're packed in like sardines.
Mm-hmm.
Lift off, 4 hours. Then what?
Well, so and there's the thing, right? Some people are taking medicine so they don't get queasy. You got some people vomiting. You got some people who are able to sleep. I did not want to sleep. I might have slept. I don't know. And then just the realities of the situation. Right, like guys have to go number 1. So the plan was 5-gallon water jugs. I will tell you, there's a lot of reasons people couldn't wait to get off that bird. A lot like when we stood up, like that floor between water, sweat, like I remember it being slick. Wow. Regardless of the grip tape on the floor, like I just remember it being slick. Like, get me out of here. So, like I said, you're kind of in and out, passing around. What is that? The loom tape board with all the updates. Nothing like what the boys have access to now. Thank God. Just trying to get updates. ISR feeds. How many? We had a 3 company plus mission, 3 primary objectives, and getting update about the size, getting the updates when CAS is on station, pre-assault fires, all those type of things. Do the Ranger Creed at 10 minutes. Try to hook up, and I'll do all hook up, but I'm just like barely getting. Maybe I'm weak sauce. I don't know, but we all hook up, and that door opens. The heat. I can remember that heat and stench. Like, it never goes away when you land in the Middle East, at least in my opinion. Maybe Kuwait's a little bit better, but like in that part, of the Middle East, like it never goes away. And so that's the other thing. I was like, it's still going to be hot as hell. Like I remember the heat, and it was just the dense air. And I remember being dark. Like, they opened up the door, and usually you get some like twilight or whatnot. But remember, moon phase is how we're kind of choosing when we're going. And I remember looking back from my position to kind of look out the door. Man, I couldn't see. I mean, it was almost darker.
And none of you had nods?
Not at night. Not jumping static line. You don't jump nods for static line. You got to get to the ground and put them on. So going out the door, based on the enemy threat, we didn't know what it would look like. And it's a lot different when you go out the door and you see some things on fire. Mm-hmm. That was pretty cool. Just you're already amped up, but it's all those little energy spikes as you go to let you know that this is real. This is happening. This is happening. And then, you've got 4 hours of the whiz of the C-130, not the world's quietest aircraft. That door opens and you get the whoosh of the air coming through. Volume goes up. You're shuffling. You're just trying to get out the door. People who exit the aircraft correctly on a static line jump with the combat equipment, good on them. It wasn't me. Twists like crazy. So I got to see everything. I got a 360 view multiple times. And it's my Rangers who, if they're watching this, are like, yeah, he never has good exits. He can't do what he's told, probably. But the quiet, Mike, that was the coolest thing. Because you're amped up. You know all this stuff about history. I'm a history guy. Like, I live for this stuff. And it just got so quiet. And it was like, we knew America was going to know. Right? They ended up on one of the birds. They took a feed and threw it back to like headline news or something like that after it was over, and it's on the internet. So we knew it was a big deal. So all that weight, and then that quietness, and then being as dark as it was, like you couldn't see. You could barely see. I didn't see very well, like the paratroopers, the Rangers to your left or right. So you definitely don't want to land on somebody, but you couldn't tell. And then I was trying to work out twists. And I hit the ground, sack of crap. Hit the 6 point of performance. There's only 5. I always add a 6. That's my head. And the Kevlar helmet that has the pull dot fastener comes off. It's dark as dark can be. And I'm all amped up, and now it goes to, I'm going to ruin the entire mission. Like, what am I going to do? Run around with like a nod, PVS 14. So I'm going to run around with a nod. I'm like, oh my God. And I just happened like in like 5 or 6 seconds to find that thing. And to this day, I was like, I would have never been able to live that down. So, you got to be able to laugh at yourself. And so then we're on the ground, right? And I'm able to see the last of the birds go by because you have enough spacing. I can't remember if I was second or third chalk, something like that. And I saw everybody got out, and that was a very good feeling because once our team's on the ground, we think that we can do about anything. And then we got to our assembly area, and everybody was looking around. And then you remember, like, oh, this is like the jump, the fun stuff, the sexy stuff. That's just to get to the fight. Us Rangers, I know, we're goofy like that. You know, we want to tell everybody we're awesome for jumping out of airplanes, but it's like, maybe you drive or walk in too. You know, it's up to you. Like, take that hard way if you want. But then it was like, we got to do this right, and hurry the heck up and get out of here. And seeing the pre-assault fires and the fire and the smoke that they made, that kind of was like, let's just hurry up. There could be some people around here. And at my level, as an E5, I probably didn't have the full intelligence picture, which is fine. But our main mission going into Rhino was really clear the compound, send a message to the Taliban, and then a site survey whether or not it could be used for follow-on ops, which of course we know that it later became FOB Rhino. So the rest of that mission, you know, with a force of 160 with 3 objectives, honestly, probably a third of the folks to half of the guys at all time are on security, right? Like, now you got to secure an airfield. Great part about jumping on it, right? Now you actually got to secure it. And so I was part of an element that got to go into the main compound, just like you would do in any military operation. Good sensitive site exploitation. You're checking door handles. You're checking electricity, what's running, you know, who's been there last. Do we think they're coming back based on fuel in the vehicles, all those type of reports. And I think we had about maybe 2.5 hours on the ground max. I'd have to go look at it. But it felt like we were there for 15 minutes.
Oh, I bet.
Oh, there was never a time. I remember when we were in our security positions before we broke down to kind of collapse to load the aircraft, and just I felt like I was seeing everything. You know, you were just, you know, the first time you're just so hypersensitive, you just don't have the experience enough to maybe be super calm. At least I didn't. I tried to portray it, but we knew as this was happening, like this is a big deal. Like this op is a big deal. And so luckily, you know, that when the birds came in and were able to flush, we had, you know, 10 fingers, 10 toes. Everybody was able to load up, and it was more uncomfortable leaving than actually the jump, just so the way that, you know, you just cross-loaded to get in the birds. Like, everybody was accounted for, but it was pretty tight. It was interesting. And 15 minutes later, folks were racked out. There were no high-fiving. Like, it was just exhausted because you've waited 2 days to do it. This is the first time you've done an op. So your body kind of just like gives out. Yeah. 100%
like
gives out.
The adrenaline dump.
It's gone.
So you guys were there on the ground for 2.5 hours. Sounds like you didn't take any contact. It was relatively benign from a
a great soft mission. All the planning was there. Pre-assault fires. People who were there. If they were only a couple decided to stay and fight, that was a pretty quick show. Actually, one of my roommates was able to take down the first combatant for Rangers in Global War on Terror, Travis Edison. So shout out to him. Great human being. But you know what's crazy about that, and I'll bring it up. Travis is a wonderful man, and he was my roommate. And later he talked about the fact that he killed somebody. And I hadn't killed anybody yet after the end of my first deployment. So I was like, what do you, file that away. You know, thought that'd be something to be like, that's pretty cool. Right? That's kind of that, in that, like that's pretty, I mean, you did your Ranger job. You actually got to get one of the guys. Like, that's pretty cool. He said, I think about it a lot. I mean, after 9/11, talk about not needing too much justification for anything, right? Bad guy on the target after 9/11, not after years and why are we here and that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, a few months later, I think about that.
Yeah. Do you know how many opposition forces were on that target when you guys took it down?
I don't remember per objective, but I know when we cleared the main compound, that thing was a ghost town.
Yeah. Summer loosens everything up. Later nights, different schedule, routines you built all year just kind of quietly disappear. And honestly, most of that is fine. That's what summer is for. But now we're heading back into it. The schedule fills back in, the mental load comes back, and the question is, what habits are you actually bringing with you? For me, AG1 is the first thing that goes back in. It's non-negotiable. AG1 sent me this, and I use it every single day. And you should too. It's 1 scoop, 8 ounces of cold water every morning before anything else happens. That's it. 30 seconds, and I know my nutritional baseline is covered no matter what the rest of the day looks like. Here's what makes it worth it. AG1 is a daily health drink with a multivitamin, pre- and probiotics, superfoods, and antioxidants all in one. The next-gen formula has 75 plus ingredients, clinically shown to help support gut health, fill common nutrient gaps, and improve key nutrient levels within 3 months. It can help maintain energy, support immune health, and keep your gut working right, even when your schedule is unpredictable. I've been using it consistently, and the difference in how I feel day to day is real. It's the one thing I don't let slip. Visit drinkag1.com/micdrop and get a free AG1 flavor sampler and a free bottle of vitamin D3 plus K2 in your welcome kit with your first AG1 subscription order. That's drinkag1.com/micdrop.
I forget which platoon took kind of like the entry point outside of the compound. They had contact, and then pre-assault fires took care of some folks on our other objective.
Yeah.
So we had one platoon on each. So my platoon, no contact.
Yeah.
No contact.
So you guys are there for 2.5 hours. Then the C-130s that you jumped out of picked you back up. Was the intention kind of big picture wise to really just scout that location out if it was to be used later? So you guys, there was never a plan to leave people there and take it over and defend it. It was more of a scouting operation.
There's that, and then you look at the big picture. It also signifies that the United States can do whatever it wants whenever it wants to,
right,
with overwhelming combat power. That was a big piece.
Show of force.
A show of force, and we'll see that again. Now, we did have an element that same night, was with the special mission unit doing a QRF in Pakistan. And so this is where the story kind of takes a little bit of a turn. And we have a UH-60 with a Brownout for the QRF, and we actually lost 2 Rangers that night in the Brownout. I believe that they unclipped. They, how when those helos kind of are loitering and it's getting jumpy, depending on your experience level, and sometimes not, it feels like you are hard on the ground. But it's believed that folks were so amped up that they unsnapped prior to, and then resulted in the loss of Specialist Edmonds that night.
Yeah, that's tough.
I'm
curious. I mean, and it's hard to even kind of wrap your mind around the mentality at that point versus as the word drug on. But I mean, what does it feel like to jump into enemy territory at night, knowing that you're essentially the first conventional forces to enter the war?
I mean, that's what we signed up for. That's why you want to be in special operations. You want those opportunities. You're looking for those opportunities. We're not here for college money, not here for good training. Schools are fun, but once you become a professional, it's part of your kit bag that you have to be a better killer. It would just felt, if you ever want to I'm the man or we're the men type scenarios, it was that. Yeah. It was an absolute blessing. And then after you do something like that, you look back on the Rob Phipps and our Panama veterans and how we looked up to them. And now it becomes a legacy to carry. because there's a real interesting change that starts happening with Ranger Regiment after that jump in successive operations. I think the special mission units are kind of, whatever the nation needs, right? And Ranger Regiment has a couple niche missions that it's known for, but this started developing the character of the Ranger Regiment. For the special missions units, there might have not been anything kinetic, but they're always operating.
Yeah.
Regiment, not as much in places and times, but not as much. And so the culture of the organization is going to change from if the balloon goes up to no, we operate 24/7. And that's going to change a lot. That's going to change a lot with how the regiment operates.
Yeah. Was there ever a moment during that jump where you thought, this is it?
I'm a Christian. And so I actually think about death all the time because I know what's on the other side of it. So what a great way to go out. I don't want to be too crazy about that. I didn't want that to happen. I don't want anybody else ever to get hurt. But I look at things because I'm pretty deep in my faith. Mm-hmm. It allows me to deal with those type of things without having to really compartmentalize. It's just part of the process. So when you think about those things, for me, it's what's the impact going to be on my family? That's what would cause me to be a little bit more emotional. Like if I'm gone, my dad never wanted me to join the military because he did not serve in Vietnam, but he had friends who died in Vietnam. And that's the legacy of Vietnam for my father, like for his family, right? And that's fair. That's fair. Everybody's allowed to have their own thoughts about it. So I always thought, if something does happen to me, it has the opportunity to tear my family apart. And I always worried about that.
No, I can understand that. Have you always been deeply rooted in your faith, or has there been a point where it was a resurgence in it, or has it always been something that has been strong conviction-wise?
Kind of 2 points to that. So I grew up in a wonderful town, Marietta, Ohio, but I didn't know my birth mother. So my dad was a single father. Actually, I was given custody to my birth mother, but I think we left when we were 2. So when I say I didn't know her, didn't know her. It's how it happened. My dad fought for custody, got my sister and I. My sister is 2 years older. She remembers our birth mother, which makes it a little bit different, especially being a girl and the mom. So my father, once he decided to get custody, he was going to be the best father he could be while being a traveling salesman. Right, so he overpaid a wonderful babysitter that we had for many years there in Marietta, and we always went to church. We were also pretty poor. I just looked on Zillow, and the house that I grew up in, you can get for $31,000. If that puts it in perspective, like the neighborhood and kind of
especially in today's
especially in today's market, and that's okay because he's a wonderful man that worked hard, and all we wanted to do is be around him, and he had us go to church. And since Dad was the hero and we went to church, church became somewhere fun. Church became juice and cookies. Church became a place where we were not the babysitters and we saw maybe some other different group of friends. So I've, being younger, pretty unquestioned with my faith. But if I fast forward to the second deployment, but I would say I was a Christian on paper, not really living it out very well. We go to my second deployment, and at this time, SOF is not, let me put it this way, the Ranger Regiment part of SOF is not humming, right? We're still trying to get the right authorities to do missions. That our higher command on the counterterrorism side is figuring out what we can and can't be used for, right? We haven't developed the reps to be able to do what the Ranger Regiment currently does. So second deployment, there's a lot of sitting around for the first half of our 3 months. I mean, we're in Bagram, and like I'm becoming like an Olympic class distance runner and lifter, right? Like it just is what it is. We're helping CVs build, because we're the Rangers, and there's other people who may not be doing that, and that's okay. We all get ours eventually with that. And those small little Gideon Bibles that you probably get in, navy blue if you're in the Navy, or we get them in camo in the Army. I read the New Testament straight through. I had the time, right? We didn't have a lot of time to really train and shoot. Just waiting for the word to when we were going to go out, and eventually go up to Asadabad for I think 5 or 6 weeks to back half of that deployment. But I read through the New Testament, and once I did that, I'm a history background guy. I like evidence. I ask a lot of questions. It gave me what I needed. It put on my heart, if this is what I say that I believe, I should probably really do some studying. And what helped for me, that was very interesting, was to see and hear about all the shrines throughout the Middle East that were Christian shrines that the Muslims also kept and guarded and revered. That really got me on that history. Like, we've got varying different people. Like, we got a lot of deniers of a lot of things in the world, but like history, theoretically, like history can be like science, right? Because it's real, factual, happened, and you can draw conclusions. So that's what was big for me, Mike. That was huge, actually, being about it instead of saying I was a Christian.
Yeah. I definitely want to dig much deeper into that here in a little bit, because I kind of similarly, I would say, grew up in a way where it was technically a Christian, or on paper, because that was the tradition, the heritage. Didn't really think much about it, though. It was just kind of, well, that's who we are, it's what we do, it's where we go, it's part of the deal. And years later had kind of a full circle moment. But going back to that night, I'm curious, what was more frightening, the jump or not knowing what was actually waiting on the ground?
Not knowing. We jumped at night before. I wasn't worried about that. But, it's funny you bring that up, because I think it's a broader point, too, that I don't know if I can separate the other 8 deployments and just being in the community and knowing what we now know. But I always believed that the enemy had a vote, right? To me, that was the enemy has a vote. And you look through SOF, you specifically the Ranger Regiment, we're still losing 1, 2, maybe 3, 4 folks a year to dying in training, right? And so maybe I always thought that the enemy gets a vote, and that can become scary, right? Like, you can be the best trainer in the world, but the enemy gets a vote, and someday it's going to be your day. So 100%, the not knowing, that become much greater on the Haditha Dam, but it became relevant pretty quick on the ground. Once we had our strong points, we were good to go. I think we had enough air assets to, to take care of a first world army that night, right? Because it couldn't fail. You couldn't fail, and that was the same night that the horse soldiers, went north on October 19th. We were not aware, at least at my level, that was going on. I'm sure at the upper echelons of regimental leadership level, for sure.
If Americans could have watched that operation in real time, what would have surprised them the most?
I think it's the same thing that's still true today, 100%. They would see the ages of the young men doing the operation. I mean, think about that.
Yeah, they're kids.
I mean, that's why, and Mike, that's why my heart for Ranger Regiment, and I love the entire community, but you have somebody who's less than 1 year out of high school, might have been in Venezuela, right? Like, Not with some of the other units that were there. Not close, right? So that, I think, has always been, to me, the love of the Ranger Regiment. We're kids with a little dream to do a little bit more, and you don't really realize what you're going to be rewarded with. You think you do. I think it's much different now because everybody sees it and they watch it and they have your platform and everybody's platform. Like, you can learn a lot. You could actually make an informed decision before you went to a special. I thought I was going to go to Ranger school. I had no idea what Ranger Regiment was when I enlisted.
Yeah.
I didn't do the work. I was going to leave Ohio State after graduating, go back after 3.5 years. So that's the thing. The average American, it's the age, the youth of the people that conducted that operation. Now, don't get me wrong. We were led by some very experienced, very, very grisly men and women. But that's what I think, to me, would be. And then if I could just put a PVS 14 on somebody to be able not to see more than 100 meters in front of you. I mean, it was dark. It was dark. You were looking for some type of reflection. Like when we were in our defensive perimeters, like you're kind of looking at the different angles you could get to get some more light into your, I mean, this is not what we have today, my friend. So yeah. You're running around, you're just eating it all the time as you're going through that compound. It was great.
Yeah. So you're there for a night. How you guys get back home? Was there some high-fiving back home? Like, you guys are the mustard stain war heroes. You kick the hornet's nest over.
It goes back to so I come back, we land, we land, and then we hear about our 2 Rangers that we lost in Pakistan. Mm. And so I probably, emotional overload and everything. Like, I get tears in my eyes. Like, I was crying for sure. And I was trying to walk away. And a guy who I think was maybe the ops NCO of the battalion, James Pippin, who'll later be my first sergeant in Charlie Company for the next 2 deployments we go on. He goes, is there something wrong, Ranger? Are you all right, Ranger? And I was like, Sergeant, like we lost 2 Rangers tonight. I was it worth it? Was it not?
What was his response?
He did the same thing that he's done every time he's seen me. He's given me a hug. He didn't say anything. This is about as verbose as you'll get out of a Ranger, maybe. Yeah. I stay in contact with that man to this day.
Wow.
I love him. I didn't know he was going to be my first sergeant, but I'm telling you, the brotherhood, man.
Yeah.
But for the mission, the point of all that is knowing that the enemy gets a vote. My first operation where we should be heroes, it was on TV. We did see that in the chow hall later. Right? The Brits wanted to give us 2 pints. We weren't allowed to have them. Damn regiment and their standards. Or if I probably had to go get fresh haircuts after the op. I'm joking. But I mean, it's war. Like, you sign up for war. It's dangerous. Our training is dangerous. I think we whitewash that sometimes.
Yeah.
Not that we have to be, let's relook the risk assessment. But that, in the Ranger Creed, it talks about the hazards of our chosen profession. Like, brownouts, helicopters. It's happened before. Eagle Claw. Like, these things happen. And so early in my military career, at that time, I think I'd been in the military 2.5, 3 years. Right? Rangers are young. It's like the enemy gets a vote. What we're doing is not normal, and don't try to make it normal. And then a couple months later, Travis Edison saying, kind of feel weird about shooting that guy.
Did you talk more with him about that?
No.
It was just that one.
Dude, I was 26. I'm bigger than you are now. Like, joking. right? Like that, my mind was not there.
Yeah.
It'll be okay. We did it for America.
Yeah.
What are we going to do? Make democracies of these nations? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
No, but not to get on that.
Speaking of foreshadowing.
That was for laughs. But
Yeah.
honestly, we weren't there yet.
Right.
We weren't there yet.
Yeah. So from the time that you got back from that until you deployed again, because you did a number of deployments,
Mm-hmm.
were the first few, or I guess all of them, to Afghanistan, with the exception of the combat jump in Iraq, or did you split kind of a fair, even half in Afghanistan, half in Iraq?
Mostly in Afghanistan, more time than Iraq, because I was conventional as well. Once I was a staff sergeant and I quit and became an officer, on my conventional side, I had 3 lengthy deployments all to Iraq.
Okay.
Right.
So we'll kind of chronologically go through the rest of your time in the regiment and in Afghanistan. If you could kind of walk us through the subsequent time in Afghanistan, both from here is our overarching objective going into the deployment, and then what actually happened, and just kind of walk us through that portion of your career, if you would.
Well, even the night of the jump, any high value targets. What is a Ranger at that time? E6 and below really know what a high value target is and where they're racked and stacked. There's some charts, but that's really evolving. That's really evolving to know the networks of the networks and how that works. So we do come back from that first deployment. There are high fives. It was great. I think stars and stripes were there, and don't talk to anybody, shave on the plane, all that kind of stuff. Look like a Ranger.
Shave on the plane, I love it.
But it was pretty cool. That was a pretty good feeling. But we also had to do a burial ceremony, memorial ceremony, once we all got back, and had to add names to our memorial. And that was, put it in perspective. And then we knew we would go again. And so the cycles weren't clearly defined, which they would become over the decades. But this isn't over. So enjoy your leave. But this isn't over. And so the next deployment will be in the spring to Afghanistan.
So just maybe 6 months later.
Yes, actually it was. In the initial part of the GWAD, I believe, there's times when you have parts of all battalions gone. But just to figure out the cycles of who needs to be where, especially then once Iraq kicks off, that it becomes a thank God for logistical folks, professionals. But we knew we were going back. And I don't know if you remember back in 2001, by 2002, there's already talk about Iraq.
Oh, yeah.
So we didn't know if that would be coming, how soon that would be coming, if it would be Afghanistan. But being at my level, not quite the same access to information I think there is today on a lot of fronts. The Operation Anaconda goes off with our 1st Ranger Battalion, are part of that, and then all part of the Chapman rescue attempt and whatnot, Roberts Ridge. And one of the young men who got the now old guys, Eric Stebner, he was a Silver Star recipient. He was like my Ranger buddy during Ranger School. But because of not a lot of internet, and we don't have cell phones yet, we're still carrying beepers for alerts and stuff, I don't even know that stuff.
Yeah.
So when we get back to Afghanistan, that's when we really learn about everything that kind of goes down, which was interesting. But we still not known how to be used. I think we did a couple daytime helo raids, which you would never
think that you would do.
I mean, unless you're going for, number one. It was, but I believe it was the 10th Mountain was in charge. Was the really land combatant commander at that time. And so that was just it was just a really interesting time to be there early, when the machine wasn't oiled, like we had spare parts. We had spare parts running up and down whatever that main road is in Bagram, and just waiting to be told what to do. And then finally, we went out to Asadabad, which a lot of folks in the community are familiar with. A lot of pictures of a hotel Asadabad out there, and really trying to find our place. Like, I am sure the targeting cell at Regiment had a very clear idea, like, who all the people were in the networks. And maybe I'm just a little bit slower, but it all didn't make sense, right? We didn't understand who I did not understand. And I try to explain to my Rangers, like, we're going after the bad guys, but the bad guys, when you're marching up hills and it takes you 2 hours to get up there and they watch you, like, they're putting rocks out for us so we could step on them when we come up. And then we pristine. And then you leave, and 3 months later, you're like, yeah, there's just a major firefight there. Once the infra, like, I look back at that time, and I'm just like, I felt like maybe we didn't know what we didn't know. Not in a bad way. I'm talking from a Ranger lower leader level and kind of down. So all you could do is hypervigilance and train your guys.
Yeah.
And then just to start getting blued up on facial expressions, patterns. We did a lot of operations during the day. I wouldn't call it, I guess it'd be zone reconnaissance, right? No one had been there. And you're soft and you're supposed to work. So what are you going to do? You're going to do something. You're going to do something for the command.
Do you know why you were going out in the day and not at night?
At that time?
Yeah.
No.
Well, did anybody ask?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. What was the response?
It's for reconnaissance. It was trying to figure out, like, there was gaps in intelligence, and then
so let's send you out in the day because you can see better.
Well, it's also trust. Maybe the command trusted that we could go and find the routes before conventional forces did. Not at my level at that time.
Yeah.
Not at my level at that time.
Did you guys run into that first trip 6 months after the jump in? Did you guys run into, or did you get into gunfights, or was it pretty benign?
No. The major where we were at, we had a SEAL team co-located at ABAD with us. And the biggest thing that we saw there, like, this is very unsexy, the first two deployments for sure, which, if it keeps people alive, is not always a horrible thing as well. But I remember when the first time on a route that we had been on all the time, and I feel like every 3 days almost, one of the Hilux trucks comes back, and it's just pocketed, and it just looks like razor blades had been through that. And everybody was like, that's like a Claymore mine or something went off on that thing. And so that was 2002. That was, I think, like during the last week, one of our final missions. I think we went and recover the vehicle or whatnot. And like, hey, this isn't fair. Like, this isn't right. And then we started thinking, well, what does it look like? A Claymore. It's like, oh yeah, we use those too. Wait, that's ingenious. That's cheap. The enemy gets a vote. We're lucky nobody got severely injured on the teams that day, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those first two deployments are kind of finding your place, getting your footing, figuring out best use case. Was the third trip back then, was that more dynamic?
Yeah. Now that was kind of the thing.
Yeah.
That was kind of the thing. And so, but we also know too, because we had that battalion with 1st Battalion, the mission with Roberts Ridge, other people had started getting in gunfights, right? Like, it started to become a thing. I mean, if you remember, the Taliban was not stupid. They didn't want to openly fight you and lose. Why would they? Like,
yeah, they know
they
where
waited out every other empire in the world.
Yeah.
So to actually deploy combat power, right? And then once again, was the Taliban really the problem, or was it Al Qaeda with some Taliban sympathize? So that's all kind of getting figured out.
I want to talk about something that's been on my mind for a while. You know, I sat in the doctor's office and been told, you're fine. There's no real data, no game plan, no explanation for the things I'm actually feeling. Just a handshake and a see you next year. I remember thinking, that's it? My annual physical checks, maybe 10, 15 markers, and calls it a day. For a guy who's put his body through what I've put mine through, it's nowhere near enough information. That's why I'm excited about Superpower. This is a membership that gets you 100 plus biomarkers tested every year. We're talking cholesterol, cortisol, testosterone, thyroid, inflammation, environmental toxins, 17 core systems total. They send a licensed professional to your home, or you can visit a nearby lab. Then Superpower takes all of that, layers in your past medical history, family history, things like hereditary cancer risk, and builds you a personalized health protocol. Supplement recommendations, prescription suggestions, all of it. And it tracks it over your lifetime, so every test builds on the last. You're not getting a one-time snapshot, you're building real data over time. I've spent my entire career training, pushing my body to its limits, taking care of my dogs the same way. But I haven't always had the right data on myself. Well, that changes now. Superpower starts at $199 and may be HSA and FSA eligible. Take control of your health with Superpower. For a limited time, our listeners get $20 off to unlock their new health intelligence. Head over to superpower.com and use code MICDROP for $20 off your $199 Superpower membership. And after you sign up, they'll ask how you heard about Superpower. Just tell them Mike Drop sent you and support the show.
So instead of going back to Afghanistan, we get our wish, and Iraq starts to kick off. And we were blessed again. 3rd Ranger Battalion, we were just in that cycle. And so we got that first deployment staged in Saudi, and I'll never forget, we fly into the military airport there, and the first thing we do is we hand over our ID cards, and they badge us all into their country. I was like, this is extremely formal. This is kind of weird. And everybody, our buddies, we talk about it to this day. Like when people are talking about LifeLock, and no offense to LifeLock, no lawyers get after me, but when all these different things, it's like, yeah, we got nothing to worry. Our stuff, I mean, it's out there, man. Like, it's like, what a great business model. But anywho, yeah, so we like, that's the first thing that we do. And we had every flavor of special operations, getting ready to how that play into Iraq was going to happen. We planned for, I don't think we planned for a ground assault, but a helo assault, which that math didn't add up before we left. Just kind of the lore of Ranger history, the BIOP mission, like to jump into BIOP. I don't know if you ever heard of that mission planning.
A little
bit.
But
I kind of got, I'm not a good, my brain, I'm not the smart, I'm strong Ranger, not smart Ranger. And when I had to back brief something like 30 buildings we were going to clear, and I couldn't remember. I'm sorry, I couldn't remember 30 numbers. I can't do it now unless they're sequential. Is that fair? Like I can't. That's not the way this guy. That's an echelon above my abilities. And these things, like what were the culverts? Those concrete dips. Those were like 8 foot, and we're all carrying like 200 plus pounds.
yeah.
I'm like. And it's like as secure as an airfield can be, you know, and later we know it takes the 3rd ID and extra forces coming to take that thing. So that was the plan. Like, so when we get spun up, that's what we're going to do. That will make you think about your creator. The question you asked earlier, that will make you think about that, because there's one thing to silence the air defense in Afghanistan. There's another thing to silence what we presumed. There's so many direct fire weapons.
Yeah.
They can hit a tin can going, you know, our speed. Like that's not extremely difficult to do. So that was, but we get to Saudi, decide that the helo insertion, which after that first mission, like I do not think helicopters are sexy. They look great on the recruiting videos. God bless the 160th and those boys and everything that they can do. But I've just never been a huge fan. So we actually got a mission. Our battalion had 2 jumps. One, I believe, was Objective Serpent, which is K2 Airfield in Western Al Anbar. And then our company, Charlie Company, we got a jump into what was called Vengeance DZ. Actually, Charlie DZ, Vengeance was Afghanistan, I'm sorry. So this jump was to really just secure and do an assessment for a desert landing strip so that Tier 1 folks operating in the West as a kind of a effort to stall movement back to Baghdad so that they could really have the medical teams forward that we have to be able to assist. And within 3 or 4 nights of being there, I think we were there 6 days before we moved out on our Haditha Dam mission, there was an operator who was saved because our surgeon was there and able to treat a gunshot wound to the head.
Oh, wow.
And that is like, talk about, all right, this is all one team here. It can all kind of work together. We know our pecking order at this time. So, right around day 3, we're sitting in E-tool dug little foxholes and like, you want to try, horrible. We probably had maybe 6 inches. Like this was like the worst thing. Like you're into concrete, right? And you're just facing out. You could see pre-assault fires going on all these operations. Like 30, you could see for 30 miles. Not exaggerating. That flat, especially the bombs that we were dropping. Crazy. And then that operator's helped, and you're like, okay, what's next? Because now, like, you're in enemy territory. Like, this feels different. Like, there was no plane to come and pick us up. We were told we would get follow-on operations. No idea what that was, though.
This is Objective Serpent.
This is on Charlie DZ. Serpent was K2. Okay. So our Bravo company jumped on that airfield and seized that airfield to take control of it and to use for other forces for follow-on operations. Bravo company, when they depart, they bring their vehicles, they land them on our desert landing strip. We consolidate then the 2 companies, and they make the raid force for the Haditha Dam. And so, to my knowledge, to my memory is a better way of putting it, I don't remember knowing that we would possibly take the Haditha Dam. I think I heard about the Haditha Dam, I believe, when we got the mission for it. Bravo Company lands with all their vehicles, and we're told they're taking two platoons from Bravo Company and 1 platoon from Charlie Company. And it happened to be our platoon.
Yeah. Can you walk us through, I guess, what the Objective Serpent, or what the objective is for Operation Serpent and the Haditha Dam mission was?
Well, what the mission one was to secure an airfield, which we did, because you always want to take over their key pieces of terrain. You don't want folks to be able to get in and out, and you want to be able to land your combat power wherever you want, because we're not generally driving vehicles from the west, right? Obviously, they drove straight up from south to north. And then Haditha Dam is really to control that infrastructure. The Haditha Dam, where it's situated, controls the water flow and the electricity into Baghdad, right? So it's on the Euphrates River, and that key piece of terrain needed to be taken because there were thoughts, there were rumblings, and I don't know who had the intelligence on it, that in Saddam Hussein's way to defend and to delay an armored attack would be to flood the valley. So it would be able, way the Tigris and Euphrates split off, flood it so we couldn't use our armor. So that is what to our knowledge, the mission was. So our job was to go seize it. And we were told that there would be a platoon on the objective. So a platoon versus a company, that's your 3-to-1 mix. That's a real firefight you train for.
So you knew that going in?
Knew that it would be at least a platoon. Oh, there's a lot more. But knew it would be at least a platoon.
Yeah.
Platoon is what we thought was securing the actual dam. So now we have to get situated in vehicles. We've got everybody task aligned. You're not going to take your full squad because there's only so many vehicles, right? Not enough vehicles for everybody. So I think my squad was down to maybe 6 folks or so that would be able to go on it. But I had, based on where I fell in the pecking order of new squad leaders, I actually had the Battalion XO, who was kind of the mission command, and our fires NCO in my vehicle. And I'm driving with 14s at night, not on roads, through Wadis for the first time in my entire life. Yeah, so if those guys' disability ratings are not 100% from their backs and my driving, it should be. Mike, I'll tell you, it was probably the most prolonged period of stress. I mean, it was, gosh, I don't know if we went 6 or 7 hours.
Yeah.
But that's for the first night. And then we did a remain over day and got the actual mission plan to the boys of how we would take the dam. But like 8 straight hours, Wadis up and down with what Blue Force tracker maybe, which all it was just a green map or a blue map, whatever the heck it was, and like your dot move. Like there was nothing out there. Like it's the middle of the desert. There's worst.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that because I have a similar experience. We were in Nazaria and a platoon of SEALs, which is 16 guys, so 4 guys per Humvee, 4 Humvees, and similarly went to take down this train station that there had been some intel, I guess, it wasn't confirmed, but it was, suggesting basically that there was some WMD material there, not necessarily actual WMD, but the support structure and logistics around it, different CBR kits and just a bunch of equipment, things that would connect some dots to WMD there or whatever. So it was a pretty high priority thing for us. But similarly, completely blacked out on nods, driving for about 6 hours. And I was one of the drivers on that mission. And I don't know about you, but I know for me, for probably 2.5 days afterwards, I had the worst headache of my life from doing that. And same thing, it was just up and down and, shitty nods. And I was the 3rd vehicle, so it was just dust everywhere. And like it was the longest 6 hours of my life. Like 6 hours in Hell Week being surf tortured didn't feel as long as this drive did. So it's funny that we had similar experiences that way, but I didn't mean to interrupt. But
no, you're good. Were you worried? I was worried I was going to hurt somebody.
For sure.
I was like, if I make a mistake right now, and this goes back to, it goes back to the Brownout incident, in Pakistan. It's like, this is danger. Like this is these things are loaded down. We've got these GMVs. They had machine gun. I think 8 machine gun mounts. I mean, P for plenty, right? It's like if one of these things tip over, the guys are like strapped like nothing that we would have as the war progresses. And of course, to be able to go where they were at, there was no armor because armor would kill you.
Yeah.
Because you got to be light and fast, right? And you got to be able to put them on helicopters and everything else. But
yeah, no, it's similar. I mean, it kind of reminds me of like when you're really tired at night driving and you're trying to stay awake and it just doesn't work, But it's like in this instance, you've got several other guys with you. You're in a train where all 4 vehicles have to be moving the right way, and you have to maintain enough space between each other, enough but not too much. And it's like you just can't see very well, and there's no way to focus any harder than you are. So it's like this maximum amount of attention span, hyper focused on something, but you constantly feel like you're not doing a good job, and none of your sensory elements work well enough for you to feel like you're actually doing what you're supposed to be doing. It's such a weird mix of just the most stressful. I mean, it was probably the most stressful thing I've ever done, which is weird because certainly a lot of other things that I've done that were far more dangerous or dynamic. But yeah, it was just that 6-hour trip was god awful. But anyway,
You're driving and you feel like you're not in control.
yeah.
And I don't know about for you too, depending on your terrain. Like, we'd never done that at company level.
No,
let alone be integrated.
Yeah.
And then to have, the battalion XO, who's a wonderful man, and we had a great fires NCO, and they were trying to help me with my driving.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is the absolute
it's the worst
experience. And that was night one.
Yeah.
And we still had another one to go.
Yeah.
But
So did you just kind of camp out during the day? And
we did a remain over day, right? So camoed up the vehicles, and then we went try to do some priorities of work, maintenance on the vehicles, cleaning weapons, like the operations the next night. We know that, and we're doing mission planning, and then once again rock drill rehearsals, right? The thing that we love in SOF is the ability to know everything, have every piece of intelligence, know the distance everywhere, take out all the variables, and then in training, we throw in our own injects because we can execute the target with all the information we have and the assets we have. And now, this is like, oh, you guys are rolling under like you've never rolled before. You're going to do remain over day. Everybody's exhausted, not complaining. Any of my fellow veterans, not complaining. I'm just saying what it was. To go do a mission we have never rehearsed under not our commander and not our first sergeant, which is fine, but interesting. And I just remember thinking back, like, so this is the third deployment. Like we've never really had a normal yet, right? We weren't the kids who come in at 2010, go to Bagram or go to Iraq, and after a week, you know what you're going to be doing every single night, over and over for the rest of your enlistment. Everything was just
on the fly.
New.
Yeah.
It was just new.
Yeah.
And so remain over day, wait for the period of darkness, load the vehicles up again, and go ahead and get going to the dam. And so once again, we thought there would be platoon, and then we heard reports that some of the buildings looked like barracks, potentially for an FA. I believe it was an FA battalion. And then there were reports that, well, there is an armor brigade out there somewhere. Once again, this is from my memory. So you're getting a distilled at that time squad leader. What I think I know is I'm trying not to get people killed in Wadis for the most part. As the dam approaches, it's obviously there's electricity there. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a very good dam. Produces electricity. So it's pretty bright. We don't like that very much, but really couldn't tell how much it was defended. And as we get up to the dam, the first vehicles, they just fly right through, because we're going to have east and west side security. A company from Bravo Company was a platoon from Bravo Company was going to be on the east side, another platoon on the west side, and then our Charlie Company platoon, of which I was a part of, was going to actually go down to where they thought the barracks were. And so the first platoon just speeds past with surprise and secures their objective over on the east side. The other platoon, now that the combatants have been woken up, they take care of a few people guarding the west side of the dam. And then I go to move my vehicle up with Bravo Company on the west side so that I can drop off the leaders. Well, during this time, the transmission goes out and starts smoking. So I actually have to move back up with the element on the west side of the dam while the rest of our company is assaulting. Now, in my vehicle, I only have 3 guys with me. One's a gunner, so our platoon didn't lose too much combat power, thank God. But like, this is a nut roll. Like, this is starting to be, it's just getting weird. And as vehicles smoking, we get up to the top. I'm lucky that I had a mechanic with me. He starts working on the vehicle, and we just start hearing pop, 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 and some explosions. And Charlie Company our platoon is in the thick of it, down by the barracks, and they just kill everybody. They do a wonderful job. They seize that objective. We had I think Paul Cunningham received the Silver Star. He had a guy like right over a little berm, launched just a little grenade at him. Like, it was not hand to hand, but it got super close for those boys down there. And so that night, securing the positions, it takes all night. Everybody's readjusting, and we think, okay, we're good. This is secure. Once we get the word from Charlie Company, they're good. The sun comes up. I take my vehicle, which has now been fixed, to go, consolidate with them. And as we go down the road, we get an ambush on both sides of the vehicle. We had missed our turnoff to the left. There was like a telephone pole that was down through, and the way it looked on us, couldn't tell where the road was at. It was light, and we knew where to go, and it just looked different on the ground once we maneuvered. Well, that was another barracks that hadn't been cleared yet. The whole place was full of Iraqis. And I don't know if the final estimate was that it was over a company plus or just around that area.
Which is how many?
What's that?
How many?
120 maybe, something like that total. And then not everybody stayed to fight, of course. But it was a very, very large element. And then we started getting reports, right, about that brigade and them mobilizing. And we could see Cass during the day doing some gun runs. But that ambush, I had a decision to make, and this is an interesting decision. If I continue to go straight, we're in trouble. Like, that's not going to play well. If we turn around, we've got to come back through the ambush. Both sides of the road would like to pick a side to fight through. Elevated terrain, and we're going to crash a vehicle. So that's not going to happen either. So we all just picked our targets, those who were able to shoot based on their gun mounts. And thanks to Shane Pitts and Josh Gell, we're all still here today. Like, the volume of fire as we went through the ambush, we turned it around as we were still getting fired because I didn't know what else to do. Didn't train for that one. Didn't train for, like, weren't going to get out. We have no guns. That's kind of a bad deal. And I think through that all the time. And if you go back to how am I a person of faith, the enemy didn't vote well that day at all. RPGs, machine gun fire, vehicle littered with holes. Now the engine block is smoking as we're trying to get up that hill. I think some folks helped us finally put. I think that one was scrapped. That one got towed out a few weeks later. But I mean, just that volume of fire was something. And so all I could do was just tell people where to shoot. That was pretty helpless. at that time, since we had our vehicle fixed, I wanted to be able to operate the radio to link up with Charlie Company. I wasn't driving. I had our mechanic driving. And then I'm inside of this GMV, and all I can do is tell my gunners to lay on it, and they just crushed it. That was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of, and then you say like, oh, be careful what you wish for in firefights, because that was more like, that's not your soft firefight. No banger went off, no surprise. Like, oh. No, none of that. Like, we were those guys. And then there was 45 straight minutes of cast gun runs on that whole entire compound. The 160 at the Little Birds were flying during the day after that, which I'd never seen before outside of a blank fire iteration in training. Absolutely amazing. My driver got hit in the foot, so I tell him whenever I see him that I get his parking space for that one and his free license plate. And then Josh Gell, he got hit 7.62, just like right there. Right, perfect body armor, like 1 inch down, it would have been a problem. And so, regiment asked for, or 375 asked for the plate. Remember, this is 2003. Because now it's like a war relic. Because we hadn't been in a ton of firefights, right? So it's like in the case for like years, like 3 or 4 years, and then, it gets a little more kinetic all the time. So it was that was crazy. But we get up to the hill, and then we just see the destruction. That was a beautiful thing. Great day to be American. And then for the next week and a half, the BCO platoon on the west side, firefights every day. BCO, I think, moved some folks to assist, but if there's a sign out there, BCO happy motoring, Haditha Dam, it just riddled, just absolutely riddled with bullets. It's like everybody from Syria wanted to come and help out, get their jihad on. And then our Sergeant Major at that time, Sergeant Major Birch, who's a legend in the unit. First night or second night, we're in our OP, so now we feel pretty secure, except for BCO is always a little bit. My Charlie Company folks, we feel pretty secure. We clear the 18 stories of the dam. Like, how do you clear 18 stories? Very slowly. Like, I don't know. Like, it was nobody there. It was crazy. But Sergeant Major Birch, also known as Ironhead, gives instructions, don't shoot in these sectors of fire, and he's gone for the next 3 or 4 days. I think I had 28 years in the unit. Don't fire in between these sectors of fire. And at night, I swear it's every 15 to 20 minutes. Craziest. We're like talking, like we are going to talk about this the rest of our lives.
So what was the deal with that? The don't fire between these two?
Because he might be down there.
Do you know what he did?
Yeah, he was killing fighters that were coming in from the east and any remaining Iraqis.
I mean, by himself or what? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So at this time, like, we are linear, strong pointing the dam, and we don't have folks. Gosh, I can't remember if it's north or south. I want to say it's the north side. We don't have people there, right? Because what we do have is it's a dam. So, we use the terrain to your advantage. We can see things coming, people coming from a long way off.
Yeah. From start to finish, I guess from the initial approach to the dam until it was what you would consider fully secured, taken over, and combat operations are generally ceased. How long did that take?
So we would end up, I think we took mortar fire for about, this all runs together. Like there was mortar fire there for about, I think, 7 days in total.
I've thought a lot about what responsible firearm ownership actually looks like. Not just training and carrying, but how you store when you're home, when you have people over, when your situation changes. For a long time, the options were basically lock it up so tight that access is a real problem, or leave it somewhere accessible and hope for the best. Neither one of those is a real answer. Stopbox sent me their Stopbox Pro, and it absolutely changes the equation. It's completely mechanical. There's no keys, no batteries, no app, nothing that can fail you at the worst moment. 5-button interface built for muscle memory. You practice it, it becomes automatic, and when you need access, you have it immediately. It stores securely and stays within reach. I keep mine bedside. It's TSA compliant, so you can check your firearm safely and legally when you fly. And it's made right here in the USA. It's no tariffs, American workers, American quality. They also just launched the Stopbox UCAN, which uses the same mechanical locking system, but with a lot more storage capacity. Firearm, ammo, gear, everything you need secured but ready. More capacity than bedside solutions, more control than a range bag. It's more practical than a big hard case. If you've been looking for something that finally combines long-term storage with real readiness, this is it. For a limited time, our listeners get 10% off Stopbox when you use code MicDrop at checkout. Head to stopboxusa.com and use code MicDrop for 10% off your entire order. After you purchase, they'll ask where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that our show sent you.
One round caused a Ranger casualty, but generally they were trying to shoot very narrow, very hard to get that. But really, that was about a 2-day battle for the most part, except for BCO. If you ask BCO, that could have been that platoon on the west side. I think they were maybe 8 to 10 days longer.
Yeah,
crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
The assault on Haditha Dam did bring Rangers and Delta Force together against one of the most heavily defended objectives in Iraq. What did it look like from your perspective when those two organizations came together for a single mission?
Clean. I mean, they're still to this day, DevGru, CAG, our big brother, and we would never say anything other. I don't want to say we know our place. Senior leader Rangers are very happy with the advancements of the Ranger Regiment. So from what I could see, which is fair from my position, there were an assumption that if you have more assets, more experience, more training, probably pretty competent, and we should go with what you tell us to do. But at the same point, I've never worked, and I don't know if I've had any time with DevGru, but I've never worked in and around Delta where they have not asked our opinion of what to do. And just that level of professionalism of doing that. I mean, you might be told to go outside and fly a kite, but that is something that has always stuck with me. And it's just common. The best Ranger leaders will do that too. You get your say. You earn the ability to have your say. You don't earn the ability to have your way necessarily. But as long as you get to be part of the decision-making process, and that's what I found really special. And then I also think there is this, I don't know what percentage it is now. I think it used to be around 60, maybe closer to 50 now, of those folks come from Ranger Regiment.
Yeah.
So they get it, right? And I think there is a little bit of a mentoring. That's what I experienced. So I've been blessed. I've experienced a lot of good things through my career a lot of really positive leaders, and I know not everybody has that, right? And some people have really traumatic circumstances or individual personal challenges that sour their taste in the military. I always felt like I was lucky to be on the team, and that kind of allowed me to look at things in maybe a little more positive light than everybody else.
Yeah. I mean, without sharing anything classified, can you walk through their role in that as it relates to your guys' position and objective?
Oh, that was for that operation specifically. What they did never got down to my level. So
your awareness of them even being there was pretty limited.
Mm-hmm.
You knew they were there, but you really didn't know in what capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any chance that maybe the guy that went solo was incorporated with them?
Possibly. but
you don't know.
But would never ask. Yeah. Wouldn't even be a thought that I had. We had some really great snipers too that I left out that he was working in tandem with, that were kind of like the dam had some higher points, even though it was already like in some, they made some great shots too. But yeah, I have no doubt. Yeah. But even sometimes in training operations, as we know, there's a training operation going on, and there's inside of training operations. I think it's a fair way to put it.
Yeah. Were you aware that they were in on it from the start? Like, did you know that they were going to be there, or?
We know. I knew that they were in the West, but their level of involvement, no.
Yeah. What did the public never hear about the battle for Haditha Dam?
I don't know. The story got told by a few folks from their firsthand experiences pretty well. Everybody knew we needed to seize the dam, but we thought it was going to be in and out. Stayed there for about a month afterwards, bathing in the dam. It was, once the first week plus was over, it was a pretty secure environment. With the contact that Bravo Company took on the east side of the dam, I would assume was part of the spin up when we looked at like the Syrian Foreign Fighter Task Force and everything that involved, like how quickly Iraqi army individuals came to fight. Like if that wasn't foreshadowing for what we would see over the next 20 years, nothing was. I think that is somewhat lost in the story of who was fighting on that east side of the dam. Yeah, that'd be about it.
I mean, you had 2 combat jumps before most Americans had ever even heard the term global war on terror. At that time, did you have any idea how long those wars would become?
Never. I mean, I love history, and I never thought, and I didn't think America would have the stomach for another Vietnam. I know Al-Qaeda hit us on our home turf. I get that. But I never thought America would have the stomach. So there's a goodness in our resiliency and want to fight for 20 years. There's a goodness there, isn't there? Sometimes you do it right because it's right. But if you look back and it's not right, now we got a different conversation. But I never thought in my lifetime that just because if you look at the age of people, right? And if you grew up and you went to college and you were during Vietnam and you didn't want to get drafted, then 20 years later, it's the 1990s and you'd be in your 40s and you'd still remember that. And then another 20 years, you're in your 60s, and those are our political leaders. And it was shocking. I read too much. That's why I became an officer. I'm joking, but that's like the joke. And the book, I cannot remember who wrote it, but it was one of the few books about Al-Qaeda that was out. It was called Inside Al-Qaeda. And it had a breakdown on every nation And I mean, and this was an expo, like it was great. I mean, open source, is what it is. Just every country and what, if they had a likelihood to have an affiliation with Al-Qaeda, if they did, and it named names. Well, it was a great book. In Iraq, I think it was less than a page. And they said, you'll never have a problem with Al-Qaeda in Iraq because of one person. Saddam Hussein won't let it happen. So kind of interesting. You know, you study history and you see it, and that idea that we would be there that long, that we could actually think you can change culture.
Yeah, well, I also think there's a very fine line between resilience and stubbornness due to a lack of an objective.
Oh, sure.
Which I think was more why we stayed as long as we did. Not more, I think it was all of why we stayed. I mean, I've interviewed pretty high-ranking officers that were at pretty elevated positions in those decision-making back rooms, and you know, even their kind of summary of a lack of really understanding what the goal was. What does winning look like? You know, at what point have the boxes been checked for us to say, okay, we're good, we can head home, and not even knowing what those boxes are, let alone whether or not they're checked or not, you know. So I'm curious, I mean, looking back on it, having spent, you know, a number of years in the military, both as an enlisted, as an officer in Iraq, in Afghanistan, you know, as we sit here and look back on it now in the rear view, what is your perspective of both of those theaters of operations? Were they necessary? Were they necessary for anywhere near as long as we spent there?
It goes back to there's no clear objectives. You can go a million different ways on that, but I would put it like this: if it was a business, would you have cut your losses? Like, would you have ended your time with that brand? Like, would you just kind of like marginalize it? That's not the part of the market that we want. Mm-hmm. There's probably a different way to go at that. And I will tell you, I know that's goofy, but I look at a lot of things as a business model and what would people do? And then that's what makes you disgusted, because a lot of people did look at it as a business model. Yeah, and the business model was very profitable to stay involved.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't think it's a silly way to look at it at all, because it drives logic and reason based on pros, cons, outcomes, et cetera. And to me, you could argue it's actually probably the most strategic way to look at it, because there's no emotion. You know, it's data and you know, and reason. You know, so to me, I mean, to your question, I think not only would I have, you know, cut my losses and pivoted way sooner, to me that I would even back it up even further and say, from kind of a market research standpoint, they should have known that it doesn't make sense to stay here for 20 years before we even go there, you know. And to me, that's the biggest problem and hiccup with not having an objective is, well, to me, it's like being in a rowboat, you know, and not knowing where you're going. You're just paddling around, you know, and then saying, how long do you plan on doing this? Well, I don't know, till I figure out where I want to go. You know, I mean, that's kind of what happened. And, you know, to me, the travesty of all of it is, you know, there's thousands of young men and women who never came home, and tens or even hundreds of thousands who came home with, you know, scars and both mental and physical aberrations that they'll live with for the rest of their life because of it, you know. And I feel very strongly in that our elected leadership should have a much higher vested interest and do more homework before you dedicate, you know, the lives of our young men and women who have volunteered to potentially give their life for a cause. You better damn well understand, you know, if that cause is worth that risk and what the end game looks like. And I don't think either of those were satisfactorily met with both of those theaters.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
All right, so At that time, you were an officer at that time, right?
For Haditha Dam?
Yeah.
Nope, still enlisted. I hadn't quit yet.
Okay.
So at that time, I was a staff sergeant, squad leader, and 3rd Ranger Battalion.
Okay.
But an interesting piece of Haditha Dam, somebody saw or heard about the turning around in an ambush and thought it was interesting. So about 12 days after the initial battle, we had folks from the counterterrorism command come see us up on the hill, and I got a question. He's like, "All right, well, Ranger Mayne, what can I do for you?" I was like, 2-star general. Probably now's a good time to ask. I had a waiver for my hearing that was preventing me from going to Green to Gold and going to Clemson for a master's degree. So I thought he'd probably be the person to talk to, and I said, "Yes, sir. Got a hearing waiver, currently in to go Green to Gold. I want to come back, be an officer, lead Rangers." And he's like, "Okay," and went down the line. I come back in our community mailroom, postmarked maybe a week after that engagement. The waiver got approved. I'd been waiting for months. So did it come into play? Could it have been timing the way I want to believe the story?
Yeah.
So that's what after that deployment, so 3 combat deployments, leading Rangers, is when I went off and took a hiatus, went to Clemson to get the easiest masters I could, because I wanted to come back and lead soldiers and Rangers, and that was human resource development. And there's put a pin in that will come into play later, but also big fan of college football. Big fan of girls. I like girls. I'm single at the time. Big fan of the weather that allows girls to wear sundresses. So I met Nicole Harris, and we've been married 20 years. Last December. She's been through a whole lot. I've put her through a lot. But yeah, I was able to meet her in that time.
So she was at Clemson also?
She was at Clemson. She had finished up at Florida State, got her first job, so she was dating a student. She always had a hard time with that. Once again, it worked out. But staying connected to my boys a little bit more, because now we got cell phones. We don't have beepers anymore. We got cell phones. And we're in, 375 Task Force are in Fallujah. They're in Ramadi. And I'm in Clemson, and I felt like a worthless, because that's really 2003, 4, 5, the machine starts.
Yeah.
And then, everybody, what flavor are you? What do you bring to the table more than, the territorial stuff kind of gets, like, we got to, based on what the objective of killing every bad guy, in order. With some type of order to it, it got real. And when I talked about a big cultural change in regiment, like knowing that we were going to deploy every time, and when the leaders started losing Rangers, and it would, every deployment, one or two, that's when the force and the professionalism really changed. Because prior, when I came in, we were doing reindeer games. Right? Clinton era, didn't have as much money to train.
Yeah.
Had free time. A lot of games. Right? A lot of people who assessment of why they're there is because of who they knew were a training event that they had done, where they can adhere to the PT standards. They were someone's boy, and all that stuff starts going out the window. And it takes me a while to get back. I have 3 more conventional deployments before I get back to Ranger Regiment.
What were those deployments?
So I was in Iraq for all 3. I was with the Gators, a 2nd Battalion, 1st Armored Brigade. So I graduate from Clemson, and I go off to Germany, and our company is part of a battalion-sized task force, and we're a stay-behind in Kuwait. So once the surge goes, they're going to go. So I was able to meet my guys in Kuwait after going from Germany, and then went up. And then for that deployment, we were just outside of Ramadi. So we were on the north side of Ramadi, the area we called it Sea Lake. And that was right before the awakening. So I was there where every time I left the gate, I mean, the IED, I mean, EFPs, all that type of stuff. You know, I went from seeing that one IED to hearing about EFPs. My Ranger school buddy, I mentioned the guy I went to pre-Ranger with in Ranger Regiment was a Silver Star recipient from Roberts Ridge. My Ranger buddy in Ranger school, Doug DeCenzo, was actually a company in that battalion that I was going to. And while we were in Kuwait, he was killed by an IED.
Oh, man.
So I never got to see him again.
Wow, that's terrible.
A great human being. A great human being. Like, he got an extra chance to do Florida phase again because he was helping me pass it the first time. I appreciate him and his wonderful family so much. But wow. So, but that deployment, man, it was the enemy, and because we weren't in the city, the enemy really picked where to fight, sniper fire, and because they never get their forces were in the city. They were not outside. That was like what economy of force you would call it. Yeah. Ensure they tell the locals where to plant IEDs. Generally simple pressure plates, not necessarily what the veracity you would find, like, because the EFPs were on like the major roadways. But we had this plot of land to control. So that's what we had to do. If you're not scared, you're not alive. For sure, I was going to die there. My wife got 2 Red Cross messages. Got blown up a couple of times. One, I can go into those, but, you know, newly married, Ranger, leading now, conventional, like loving leading conventional forces. You know, you're only as good as until you open your mouth, but I don't think I put my foot in my mouth too much. And be able to lead those guys, and they would feel like yeah, we're going to do this, bro. I can't tell you. That's a really cool feeling. I wish more soft guys. I think you see it. Sometimes we resent it when folks, and I'm not a big deal soft guy, but I know some people kind of resent it when people look at them. Now that's the privilege responsibility. And so leading my platoon, and 2nd Battalion Gators, like that was one of the coolest jobs and probably one of the most important. And it was scary. IEDs everywhere.
Is that why they, as a regiment guy and going green to gold, becoming an officer after being enlisted, is that why they don't allow you or put you back into a regiment or Ranger battalion position because they want you to experience?
Some people have, very rarely, because they're worried about the familiarness.
Yeah, like the fraternization thing.
Yeah.
But
there's a some based on need that it happened, but not never. But the regiment's model, though, isn't that. The regiment's model is you serve well in the regular Army as an officer at whatever level, whatever position that you're going to get hired into. So a platoon leader in the Ranger Regiment should have been a stellar platoon leader in the regular Army. And then you need to be a stellar company commander to come back for the opportunity, because you may not command. We have a lot of captains. We got a lot of jobs. Everybody's seen the evolution of SOF and all the little Widgetron things that we have. You're not guaranteed if you come back that you're going to command in the Ranger Regiment. But it's more, that's the model. And regiment, because of its history and the charters from the Chiefs of Staff at the Army, has a responsibility to produce maneuver and fire and effects leaders for the Army. In about 2014, 15, 16, 17, when I was privy and we were keeping the stats for maneuver fire effects battalions in the Army, folks who had spent time in the Ranger Regiment for the officer side made up like 40% of the commanders, and the enlisted were like 35% of the command sergeants major. That's just stupid.
Yeah.
From the, like, you can't, it doesn't statistically, that is such an anomaly. And so that's why regiment has always been, you will go back. And not just regiment, it's the Army saying,
Yeah.
you will do it as well. It's not like the, because the SEALs, it's a career field, right? Like you could stay in it as an officer the whole time.
Yeah.
I mean, SF has it once you make it too. We're just a little bit different.
Well, yeah, I mean, to me, I mean, now that you explain it, it actually makes a lot of sense for two reasons. One is that it's saying, hey, just getting a commission doesn't give you the kind of privilege to come back. You need to go show that you can be a leader of men before we, entrust you with that opportunity back at the soft level. But I also think it's good for the regular Army to have Rangers as newly commissioned officers leading guys, because there's going to be a trickle down of experience and expertise that gets flooded into the regular Army, which is just going to raise the overall competency of your average soldier. I think the problem in the Navy, why that's not possible and why they don't do it, is that, if you are an enlisted SEAL for 6-8 years and then you get a commission and now you come back as an ensign or an 01, they're not going to send you to the fleet.
Exactly. There's no equivalent.
There's no correlation of, like you'd be doing something you'd be such a fish out of water. It just wouldn't make sense, So the way that they do it there is they just have you switch coasts, because in the SEAL teams, you're either a West Coast guy or an East Coast guy. So if you did enlisted time on the West Coast, if you get a commission, then they send you to the East Coast so that you're at least not in charge of guys that you were, out drinking with,
Sure.
2 or 3 years
100%.
Earlier, which makes sense. But yeah, I mean, that pipeline, I think, makes a ton of sense. So that first deployment back as a commissioned officer and with the regular military, it was pretty wild being in the area where you were. Were the subsequent 2 deployments similarly stressful and in similar positions, or was that one kind of takes the cake for the diciest deployment you had?
That one easily took the cake. Then the next one, I was a staff officer, dreaded staff officer in the S3. But
what does S3 stand for the listener?
I'm sorry. So I was as an operations officer, I would say. So I did decent as a platoon leader in XO. So I became the air operations officer, which is kind of getting prepared to be a planner. And we were in Salman Pak, Iraq. Had a great commander, great command team there. Colonel Michael Shrout was our commander. But that was the 15-month deployment at a time in Iraq where they were getting ready to sign the SOFA agreement. And so he said, Tony, I need to talk to you. And he wanted to go to breakfast with me. And he never went to breakfast. He was always off cycle. And hopefully he's taking care of his health better. But he's like, could we get out of breakfast? He's like, Tony, I need to talk to you about something. I'm thinking about making you the DECO commander. Now in the Army, A, B, and C are your regular companies. And so my mind wasn't even going to where he was going. And I was like, this battalion commander is going to establish a company for me to command. I must be doing pretty well. And he looked at me and he's like, no, buddy. He said, the war here's for us is over. I need you to go back and be prepared to receive everybody. You're going to learn more doing that than you can do here writing joint operation op orders. And so I was like, you're sending me to be the rear detachment commander. Now I go back. It was one of the best professional grooming assignments that I could have. because what do you do when you're in a war zone? You get rid of any problems. And so I had to drink from the fire hose, learning how to take care of people. Barracks inspections, finding one soldier, I tell this story all the time, one soldier with 26 different bottles of prescription drugs.
Man.
26. And most of them were painkillers. Took a picture of it, sent it to every leader that I could, sent it to the health clinic. And all of a sudden, these things we talked before about Travis Edison and what do we do with him shooting the guy, and then how do you deal with it? And you're like, we systemically need to kind of figure out how to take care of people.
If you ride, you already know it only takes a second for things to go wrong out there. What a lot of riders don't realize is it only takes that one drink to change your whole life. Alcohol slows your reaction time, throws off your balance, and gives you a false sense of confidence. That combination on a motorcycle, it's dangerous. This Labor Day, when you hit the open road for some well-deserved R&R, enjoy the ride, have fun, but more importantly, never ride while impaired. The bottom line, if you hit the bottle, don't roll the throttle. Planning ahead is important because if you wait until you've been drinking to make decisions, you might not make the best one. Ride with a clear head. Call a ride, stay over, or hand the keys to someone sober. Because if you don't, you're not just risking your life. You are facing a DUI which can cause you to lose your driver's license, your bike, your job, and more. Ride smart, ride safe, and remember, ride sober or get pulled over. Paid for by NHTSA.
This idea that you've grown up in some type of leadership development system within your force is not good enough. And that one assignment for those 5 months shaped how I led after the rest of my career. What he also said is, I know you want to start a family. And so we found out that within 5 days of being back, Nicole was pregnant with my son, Luke. And so it all kind of worked out. So I owe a lot to Michael Shrout for sure.
Yeah. When you say that that 5 months really shaped how you led after that, you returned to regiment after that, correct?
Mm-hmm.
In what capacity, and or can you kind of walk us through what it was like going back to the Ranger culture after spending years in the conventional Army?
Well, I would go on to the 82nd and have another deployment there and 2 company commands. And there was a part of me who didn't think I was good enough to go back.
Really?
Oh, 100%.
Why so?
I was around some of the best people and leaders that I'd ever seen. I mentioned before, so I was in a platoon where 2 of the squad leaders, Mike Albaugh and Kurt Donaldson, go on to be regimental sergeant majors. Charlie Company, that company, just everybody, it was loaded. Like it was amazing. And then our officers, I mentioned Shawn Daniel by name as a company commander. I saw how he treated his lieutenants. I don't mind being treated hard, but those guys were really smart. And I didn't know if I could cut it. So while I was initially assigned to my unit in Germany, I didn't apply. It was very hard to leave those guys knowing the deployments as well. But I wasn't sure if I had it. And then after command in the 82nd, I was like, I'm going to regret this for the rest of I have self-selected out. So one thing you tell you, never self-select out. You can have a reason, but don't make excuses. Like, don't self-select out. So I was so excited when I had the opportunity to go back to regiment, because you still have to put in a packet. You have to be selected. There's plenty of folks who want to come back. And when I initially got into the Ranger Regiment, enlisted, we had the RIP program, pretty much a 17-day suck fest with some land nav. Don't do anything stupid. Do PT at a high level. Remember the Ranger Creed, and you have a decent chance to graduate. Well, by the time I tried to go back a decade later, because the folks I served with are now establishing the standards, and we know the importance of assessment and selection. The officer selection went also from being just a 17-day, make sure you could do the PT and get integrated, to a true assessment and selection. And so I show up the first day of that assessment and selection, and Sergeant Major retired Tyson Crosby, who I knew from Charlie Company 375, was in charge of assessment and selection. And there was no quarter granted, that's for sure. But the attitude, the pulse of the place was different. I remember officer selection, I'd been warned, said it used to be a gentleman's club. Said it's going to be a little bit different now. And it was harder than the rip that I went through to get through as enlisted. Very cognitive, very physical, a great, in my opinion, it was a great assessment and selection. And when I went to the board, and I'm not going to, everybody knows that there's a board, but maybe I will give one thing away. Make sure you say that your future aspirations do not include going to a SMU. That's just, I'm going to leave it at that, because your job is to take care of Rangers. So that I am saving somebody down the line should they get this far in the podcast.
What is a SMU?
Special Missions Unit.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah. Your job is to take care of Rangers, and the regiment produces leaders for the Army, and so regiment has that pipeline. Not that there's anything wrong with going.
Just
don't verbalize it on your job interview. Pretty stupid of me. But I was like, what? Am I going to lie?
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, it's like, getting hired by the Philadelphia Eagles, right? And when they say, what are your goals? Well, ultimately, I want to play for the Cowboys. But,
nice.
Yeah, that's actually maybe nowadays it's the other way around. It's Cowboys trying to get to the Eagles with the way they've been playing. But anyway.
Well, another way I was blessed. So in that board, it's a 5-person board, and that's a known entity. And you've got to have 5, so you got a tiebreaker. For some reason, maybe because of operational demands, there were 4 people there. And your boy was a 2-2 select. There's not too many of them in the history of the regiment, probably for a reason. So when I say things about like faith and grace and people and being lucky, I choose to look at the world that way. But I will tell you, on that car drive back to Fort Bragg, that's a miserable car drive, by the way, 8-10 hours. I was like, what am I getting myself into?
So what does that mean then if it's a 2-2 tie? Does that mean you get
They
selected?
needed the dude.
So you got
the president of the board said, might as well.
Yeah.
We could always fire him.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's a great thing about Ranger Regiment. You can release it for cause.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we needed the dude. He could probably figure it out. We'll put him somewhere where he can't hurt anything. So I go back to be the regimental assistant air officer. And this is so cool, right? All of my buddies at this time are first sergeants or ops sergeant majors. They are leading the Ranger Regiment. I have the ability as a captain coming back in, who although I was gone, to get some really great gouge and to get some great answers. But operationally, 10 years or eight years I was gone.
Yeah, it's a lot.
At that time, when we went from playing checkers to playing chess, and then my peers generally were PLs in the Ranger Regiment. So when we look at the current command structure of the Ranger Regiment, all of my peers are either battalion commanders or the regimental commander. And I knew right away, Mike, and this was hard, because I think I was decent for the conventional Army. I wasn't as good at them. And I started to realize my cognitive skills, right? Because I was always the guy on deployments. I'd stay up 18 hours a day. Like I'd never, but like eat, sleep. We always work out. but eat and sleep, you don't need to eat when you die. You can sleep when you die. That, like, mentally, I know I was not there. I knew I was not there at the end of my time at Fort Bragg, and it started wearing on my family. I didn't do well enough for someone to say, hey, we should bring him up for a company command, because that could happen on staff. And it was pretty much a low point. But then they were finally going to let me deploy. Go be in the jock, be all the people that the operators hate. That's fine. But to me, it was a big deal to finally go overseas and get out of the office. And I go and get a physical for our readiness. And I go take a hearing test. And at this time, this is post President Obama reduction of forces and cuts to the military. And for some reason, the hearing was now linked to my profile, which I've always had a hearing profile. So I'm supposed to leave in 13 days, and I come back with a piece of paper saying that I've been enrolled, electronically enrolled, like you can't go back on it, into like the med board process.
Oh, wow.
I'm 14 and a half years in. I'm a below the zone promotion to major, which doesn't mean I'm important. It just shows that at home, our life has a trajectory. Right? Not to be a general, but like probably at least make it to lieutenant colonel and go command something and feel, have a nice cake on the way out. Like so like there's an apple cart here that's getting rapidly turned over. I'm already dealing with, hey, I know I'm not as good as these guys too. Like it's probably my last time I'm coming back here, and I'm dealing with it. But now like I can't do anything, and I might have to look for a job. So this is after about a year and a half. And I am going back to the S3, the operations officer who's in charge of me, telling me, oh, and by the way, all these guys who are married with kids, go ahead and pick one. They've got to go on deployment because I can't go.
Oh, man.
Ooh. So I already knew I wasn't as good as everybody else, which is just true. It doesn't hurt my feelings because it's the truth. So I'm good with that. Cognitively, guy's so much better. And now I feel worthless. I'm feeling like I'm taken from the team. And now I don't think in terms of legacy, I let God sort that out. But I do think in terms of reputation. I just want to be a good guy who worked hard. That's what I get on the way out. Good. And now, like, all that's gone. So home life's horrible. At this point, we have 2 kids. I can't tell my wife what we're going to do next. And the regiment is extremely supportive. And the regimental commander calls me from forward, which is for us a big deal to talk to a captain. I know it's just colonel to captain, but it's just the way that it is. I mean, to me, it was a very big deal. We'll do anything for you. You tell us what you want to do. Well, I'd like to stay in the Army for one. So the med board happens. I'm found unfit. And so, well, can we fight it?
Just from hearing or from other things?
There's some other things too. Because I knew when I was leaving, I'm in the first generation where in the Army, your med board, your PEB, Physical Evaluation Board, is conducted with the VA. Prior to that, as I saw as a rear detachment commander, you would put people in the Army through the medical board process. If they were found unfit by the Army, they would then enter to the VA. And during the GWAT, we were running 18 to 24 plus months for people to get out of the service with their benefits. So I said, well, why don't we have the VA docs assist with the PEB process in the med board? And now it was all kind of joint. So that was a very quick flash to bank, and I had to document everything. Because if I didn't, I'd be looking at a medical retirement, because I had the years in, which wasn't explained to me, which I learned later. But I just knew that, like, they say document everything. Now's not the time. So I had the full kit and caboodle. And I thought it was the right thing to do, because really my goal at that point, honestly, wasn't to keep on doing what I wanted to do. It was to support my family. So that's why I did it. And then it's like, okay, well, this is great. Now you're found unfit. You can be medically retired. I was like, no, but that's not what I want. And I got people who were helping me. So much like getting into Clemson, let's see if I could stay in. We found a way for me to stay in, but there were 2 jobs available at Regiment. And Regiment loves free field grade officers. Any good staff loves good, or at least decent, free field grade officers. And it was electronic warfare officer or public affairs officer. One involved science, reading, and being smart, and the other one was telling the regiment story, which we generally don't do. And so I said, are we good with kind of like trying to see what a transition program looks like in the Ranger Regiment? I can do that as the PAO. I can tell the story that SF and the SEALs do so well about their assessment and selection that Regiment wasn't doing with RASP, which was newer for us. You know, BUBS has been around for a long time. SF selection, y'all have always done a great job using the faces and the names and the tiers of the folks that you could show. And that's all you need. We never did it. And so I got really excited about the fact that I could stay in Ranger Regiment another 3 years and then only have one more assignment and retire. So I became the PAO, and we started what was called the Ranger for Life program. And the Ranger for Life program was the unit's transition program. But to get it set up, one, I knew there was a model. I knew their unit in Fort Bragg had something, so we talked with them. I knew that SOCOM had a transition program for their wounded, injured, and ill called the CARE Coalition. And I started around going to other Ranger nonprofits to see what they did. And my time as a college boy, so I graduated from Ohio State, then enlisted and going to Clemson, I realized the one thing we don't do very good, we don't bring the alumni back in. Like that's the gap. Right? Like I wanted to go to Ohio State because I grew up in the great state of Ohio because of Buckeye football. And then I had a way to stay involved. You know, you look at what the end product is. And our end product was kind of like, well, if you're leaving, we got another widget behind you. What if it wasn't like that? And the ops sergeant majors of all the Ranger battalions, the 4 Ranger battalions, and at our headquarters, were all Charlie Company 375 guys. Mm. So I was able to talk to them. So it wasn't just some officer idea. So it took a couple of years to develop. We started doing a little bit of marketing on the idea that you're a Ranger for life, that service, honorable service here matters, and you have a way to give back. There is always a give back. That's why the college business model, it's something that everybody should study. Their end product is somebody involved. Their customers are involved in the product. And we just didn't do that. Of course, it hits home when you go through a medical board yourself. And so I'm like, what about the E4 and E5 that's getting out? What about somebody who enlists for 3 to 5 years, and not just they have a med board, but what if they just do have to go back home? I've been around the military enough to know that people generally are running to or running from something. And they're going right back as soon as they're done, right? We talk about the stress we have as senior and enlisted and officers getting out, and that might be true, but it's easier to find your purpose when you have income. I'm just saying, it helps. It doesn't make it easier. It's helpful. Those younger kids don't have that. So that's what we did. We started this idea of a Ranger for Life program, did it for about 3 years, very slow in traction, and part of being the PAO, I was kind of a gatekeeper for the nonprofit. So if they wanted to do something, I had to know the rules, talk with the lawyers, and then present it to the regimental XO. And if it made sense, was legally, ethically immoral, helped Rangers, and the people providing the services weren't taking advantage of the placement and access, then we could greenlight programs, right? Or at least give it to the regimental commander for his decision. And I love doing that, because I knew the impact that that would have long term. When I was gone from the regiment for 8 years and I was using Al Gore's internet, what do you think I was looking up? I was looking up, oh, that's Special Operations Warrior Foundation. There's something, if anybody dies, the dependents are all getting school paid for. Regardless of what the military is like, it's taken care of with great people, now with tutoring and all these other assistance that they provide. I knew about the CARE Coalition, Operation Healing Forces. I knew about all these organizations. And one of them, Gallant Few, the director who lives over in Trophy Club, Carl Monger, he came down and told about the Ranger program they had. And so I started volunteering with his program while I was still in Ranger Regiment and saying, this is how, this has legs. This isn't going anywhere. Well, at the time this is happening, pretty stressful on the family till we figure out that we're allowed to stay. Really causes us to spend a lot of time in prayer with our church. And our great pastor of our church at that time at St. Luke in Columbus, Georgia, used to have a military ministry. And it was run by a guy named Ralph Puckett. Now, Ralph Puckett is Colonel, retired Ralph Puckett, a Medal of Honor recipient who just passed away a couple of years ago. And in the Ranger community, he stands with Darby, Merrill, Downing, all the legends of the Ranger Regiment. And we knew if we had to leave Ranger Regiment for one assignment, and I was able to get United States Special Operations Command in Tampa, not a horrible place for a PAO, if you remember, got to put it on to perspective, as a PAO to go for a final assignment, just to learn more about the enterprise. But I said, when we come back, we're going to retire in Columbus, Georgia, and we're going to run a military ministry. I don't know what I'm going to do for work. Don't know what house we're going to live in, but I know where my church is, and I know what my purpose is. So that was my 5 years in Ranger Regiment that led to going to SOCOM. And the deal with SOCOM, I got SOCOM because I volunteered to deploy first. And this would have been in 2017, 2018. And that was the time when General Nicholson was the commander. And, it was kind of like his all-in, one last hoorah, trying to make trying to make a third of the Afghan Army Special Operators. And one of his main, arms was information operations. So I got to go out in the field all the time in SOF, which had never happened. It was kind of like, what do we do? And the last mission I ever went on with an ODA out in Nangarhar province, we were able to get in a firefight. And that is still one of the coolest experiences, like all these other times early in the war. And then, but you look at that as like the bookends, and now you have this ISIS presence there, and this, it just tells you evil is always going to be there. How you deal with it becomes very important. But I spent 2 more years at SOCOM after that deployment, and all really prepping with my off-duty time to do what we do for Rangers in Fort Benning, Georgia right now.
Yeah, that's incredible. So
it's a blessing. I didn't get to do the cool stuff because I wasn't meant in the rest of my life to be the cool stuff guy.
Yeah.
And that's okay. There are some people who got to be operators or do things more technical, more advanced with more people who now have a skill set to help drive the next advancements. Mine's taking care of people.
Yeah.
It's not the technology, the tactics, the procedures. That's I wanted to be that guy. I'm not.
Yeah. The firefight that you got in, so what's your rank at this point?
I'm a major. I'm escorting somebody named Marty Skovlin. You know Marty Skovlin?
Yeah.
Friend? Yeah, Marty, but he was at Black Rifle, Task and Purpose. When he came over one time, he was at Task and Purpose. I brought him over again. He got 2 week embeds with SOF. Like, that just doesn't happen. But, like, my op pace, I had people in and out of there because I was told to. So I said, well, it's just kind of in the orders following business a little bit. And so we were at an outpost called Blackfish, in Nangarhar, one of the few at this time actual SF outposts when you're talking 2017, 2018. Oh my goodness. And so the insertion vehicle into kind of like our march off point, and it's to overwatch a clearance operation of Afghan National Police, possibly. I might be off on the acronym. But it was one of the local law enforcements that they were going to do a clearance, and we were just a couple 100 feet above on a ridge line, being able to call close air support. They were maneuvering by themselves. We had interpreters where we could hear what was going back and forth. And Marty, and I just saw him up in Boston last week. He's a dear friend. Marty was getting a little journalist PO'd, right? Like, which we generally don't give a flying crap about. Like, I brought you over here twice. Like, you're getting access no one else is. Time for you to be quiet. But he had another deadline or another story that he was going to write and travel he was going to go to. And, the air wasn't working out. So he was just stuck in the middle of Nangarhar. Like, this is the price of doing business, man. Like, I'm here too. Like, what about these guys? Like, I forgot. So, but I get him, we get him on that op. And honestly, it's fun. It's shooting fish in a barrel. I mean, there's nothing better than having the high ground, right? Like, it's a good time.
What was the setup to it? Like, how did it go down?
So we had the I think full ODA. Got a JTAC up there, marched up the ridgeline, got established. The police then, with whatever they had, less than a platoon, started walking through the village, and we just saw fighters start popping out of houses. I mean, it was it, and we're just above, and so just direct weapon systems called in CAS. Like, it was over, and once CAS came, it was over in like 5-6 minutes.
So as a major, are you pulling the trigger?
No. I wanted to, but I know the maximum effective range of my weapon system.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm more worried about getting laughed at because I'm trying to engage. Like, you're not going to, you know what I mean? Like, that'd be some Kentucky windage right there. But it was fun, right? Like, I was just like, huh.
Yeah. I also think it's hilarious that at that point you were Major Payne.
True. I'd like to say I brought it. I don't know if I did. Yeah. But here's what's interesting, like, behind the scenes about that and how, like, relationships and people. So Marty did a great job of not just telling that story, because he wasn't trying to talk about how America's going to win the global war on terror, but just telling the story of the operation and the guys. And he got great visuals because, when a CAS came by, they're like, what feels like 50 feet ahead, 500 feet ahead, and he got everything. So he goes and publishes it, and it does extremely, extremely well, like several million views within, a few hours of release. So Joe Kent sees how the story is portrayed, how he portrayed SF honorably. And he said, I'm thinking about a book for Shannon. And that's how Marty got to write that book.
Oh, wow.
But see, relationships and people and doing that, and not like I got screwed, I'm a PAO or this, that, or the other. It's just like, man.
Yeah.
Look at things horribly if you want to.
Yeah.
And it's just a blessing.
Yeah. I've got a few questions that are just kind of broad spectrum, but what does the Ranger Regiment teach you for life?
Accountability. So I was blessed. Simon Sinek, who, it's funny. I think you take every self-help book out there, their title could all be the same. It could all be called Discipline, and then the flavor of what they're writing about. But he came with a study with an admiral who was doing some study on culture in the military. And we gave our brief about Ranger Regiment, and he says, you guys are different. You have a culture of accountability. Like, part of being the officer and having to come back, you have to get assessed again. You have to go through the psych again. And now one of the evolutions of Ranger Regiment, we were a lot like SF. You pass the Q course or you pass BUBS, and you still have to make it every day in the teams, right? but there's not another assessment selection. Well, Ranger Regiment, there's an assessment selection to be a platoon sergeant. There's an assessment selection to be a first sergeant. And then if you continue to serve, there's another one. Same physical fitness standards, same psychological evaluations. So guys who are honestly broke physically, everything gets fine. Guys who are having some psychological troubles or opportunities, they're given opportunities and time and put in a different position before leadership position. They're not just kicked out. Like you're given if you don't make it, you're at the assessment selection because they want you to lead. But maybe you won't get your leadership position until you take the pause to get the full person groomed. That's accountability. The profession of arms, a profession is only a profession if it's self-policing. I think like that's the official, that's why there's American Medical Association, all that stuff. If you don't self-police, you're not a profession. And so that's culture accountability helps out.
Yeah. Why do elite soldiers often struggle after leaving elite units?
Because they don't join another elite team. They're used to elite living with elite people, and then that doesn't happen. And sometimes they'll try to be that elite person for everybody else, and sometimes that works. That's how you get a Mike Ritland. That's how you get a Jocko Willink. Like that's how you get that. You try to be that for other people. For some people that works, for some people it doesn't. But we're meant to be in community, right? So leaving the camaraderie, I mean, to me, it's common sense. It's just a whole Christian thing. Like God even said, hey, on one day, if you don't like your neighbors, still come together and like hang out at this place and tell me I'm awesome, right? Like that's what God says to do. So you lose that community, it's easy, right? And we find in the Ranger for Life program, when it comes to like your first career and job, the folks who stay the longest, it's not for the work and it's not for the money. It's the culture fit.
Yeah.
It's a community of people you're around.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Of your 8 combat deployments, which one changed you the most?
I think it's the second one because I read the New Testament.
BUBS Naturals has been supporting this show for a long time, and I've been a fan of their collagen for years. I use it every single day. But I have to tell you, genuinely fired up about what they just launched, and that's their creatine monohydrate. Now look, creatine isn't new. Most of you know what it does. It's more energy, faster recovery, lean muscle, better focus under stress and fatigue. It's one of the most researched supplements on the planet. It's recognized by the International Society of Sports Nutrition. The problem is most creatine on the market is garbage. A recent study found that roughly 50% of creatine products exceeded impurity limits, and most of it is manufactured in China with zero accountability. BUBS sources exclusively from Creapure. It's made in Germany under strict quality controls. It is the purest creatine monohydrate available. There's no fillers, there's no hype. It's 100% NSF 4-Sport certified. You know exactly what you're putting in your body. Here's what makes BUBS different from any other supplement company out there. The brand is a tribute to former Navy SEAL and good friend of mine, Glenn Bub Doherty, who laid down his life saving Americans in Benghazi. Glenn stood for self-improvement and always helping others. That's the DNA of this entire brand. BUBS donates 10% of all profits to charity in his honor. That's a company worth supporting. Live better longer with BUBS Naturals. For a limited time, get 20% off your entire order with code MICDROP at bubsnaturals.com. That's BUBS Naturals.com, code MICDROP for 20% off.
They all have a little bit, right? I will tell you, like when I was the S3 Air, when I was the staff nugger, it teaches you humility. See, this is when we talk about operators. When we think operators, no offense, I don't think officers generally, right? It's not where our minds go. But for me, that humility of knowing, hey, this thing's still going to go on without me. That's what kind of being an officer and a staff officer, I think, hopefully kind of teaches you that level of humility. So that, reading the Bible, New Testament all the way through, but then that one being a staff officer and having what I felt like. No, like, why am I here? No outcome.
Yeah.
Or no effect on the outcome was tough.
Yeah. What's the closest you've ever come to dying?
I'd say that it's definitely that near ambush. There's no doubt. I mean, two of the four of us were hit. That's a pretty good one. My door had bullet holes all through it, and it was light skin. That's got to be a pretty good one. And then also when I was 5, I was hit by a motorcycle, broke my leg in 3 places, and cracked my skull. That's why there's this faint scar. My sister had to see the ambulance come and take me away.
Oh, wow.
And my dad was on a work trip, and he had to come back and come see me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of bad too.
Yeah.
So I always felt like I've always been like really lucky.
Yeah.
I looked at it as lucky. Hospital, Jello, posters, baseball cards.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah. Every 5-year-old's dream. Right?
Yeah, right.
What's your funniest your funniest deployment story?
That's a great question. Well, I think it's hilarious that I thought that battalion commander was going to set up a separate line company command for me. Maybe I should have looked into that, checked that humility box a little bit earlier there. But, you know, memory is a funny thing. So that, I believe it was the first deployment. At the end of it, we actually went to the middle of nowhere, Pakistan. I have no idea where it was at. It's on the border somewhere. I have no idea. Couldn't tell you. Never looked it up. In fact, the Marine Corps ended up replacing us. So I think it was used like as a big desert landing strip eventually. But we were there for a few weeks. And that was the first time that I ever saw JP-8 put on human feces and a human being expected to twirl it to get rid of it. Because once again, I'm not a science guy, I'm not smart. But my dad did smoke his entire life, and that killed him. And I was just thinking, we got a lot of really smart, like we're not even allowed to burn the MRE trash, but yet that.
Seems like a great idea.
I mean, that's the reason it's not on the recruiting posters, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the one mission you still think about today?
I had, so it was a conventional deployment. It was in north of Ramadi, in that Sea Lake area, before the awakening, when things they killed the wrong people, and everything turned positive in the west for coalition forces. We were daylight operation. I believe it was about August 1st, 2006. And so I don't know as a special operator, have you ever heard the term presence patrols before?
Yeah.
In the statistics, pretty much using like Rudy Giuliani's like how you end like crime, but applying it to counterinsurgency. And okay,
It's basically just live bait walking around.
Well, you know, Mike, that's why not everybody's your friend. So we were going to do a daylight movement to contact. Now, this is conventional forces, and the unit I am in is a armored infantry company. So we have Bradley fighting vehicles. So, you know, we're all going to be really reactive. It was going to be this great operation, and you know, definitely, had to get the enemy to shoot at us to go do anything about it. So if the enemy didn't want to play that day, nothing would be done. Already not my favorite concept. You know, I get what a movement to contact is. I get it. And you do a movement to contact to seize terrain. And we weren't going to seize any terrain. So I didn't, we were doing something just to kill the bad guys. All right.
So one way to put it would be looking for trouble.
Well, that's none of these are what we say are you will find in doctrine per se, which might create some of the problems, because once again, I do think the book's written for a reason. Multiple books are written for a reason. So I have a section of Bradleys. My guys at this time, like this is when, I mean, we're counting everybody's hours. I am trying to keep human beings alive and functioning. And so little known part of this planning is that our company commander's gone. He's on the mandatory leave you got to take when you do 15-month deployments or 12-month deployments. And so I'm tasked with my platoon, 2 Bradleys, to patrol together on this very dangerous area of terrain with everybody in the back, full platoon, and then reserve somewhere else. And so I know with distance, mutually supporting fires that I don't need to have. You have 2 vehicles all the time because you're told to. That's why you do it, because you're always told to. And you feel like you can be attacked less. In Iraq at that time, no vehicle was ever running by itself. So really, every time it got hit, it was with another vehicle. So I made a decision not to fill my vehicle up with people. Which, I don't know, might have briefed it different, but I left all my dismounts where they could walk because they were close enough. And then mutually supporting space weapons, observation, fires, I'm going to get the same effects. I felt I was going to get the same effect. So the road we have to go down has an ID on it like every 3 times we go on it. But you got to go on that road because it's on the chart. So you could walk around it, but whatever. So a Bradley fighting vehicle. I've got a driver, a gunner, myself in the turrets, right? Driver's up front. Gunner in the turret, me. Actually, turret, he's on the other side controlling the gun. Forgot the turret spins on the Bradley. So, and then Haiming Shaw's in the back. 36-year-old father from New York City. And we get going maybe 2 minutes. Farm fields on either, lake kind of on one side, but it kind of sloped, and the farm field, so you're elevated, right? Typical irrigation that we're used to for the area. What's later reported as 2 155s, double stacked, go off, create a crater the size of like from that wall to the end of this chair, circle 6-7 feet deep, punches a hole through that steel, of which Haiming Shaw takes the brunt. When we all come to, everybody but Haiming Shaw, he's killed instantaneously. We are now off that elevated position by the grace of God, on our tracks, right? So not side, we're kind of teetering, but like, right? And his remains are everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. The stench, that smoke, to be encapsulated like that. And when you talk about faith and leadership and love, the hardest, I had been prepared for that. I think I was prepared for it with the decisions I made, and I think that's why there's more Americans alive. Even though I didn't do the textbook thing, I think I very much thought inside the box on that one. And the reason is, 2 days later, they decide to commit all the assets, IED clearing assets for that road in the west. We advance 500 meters and call off the rest of the mission. EOD has used all of their explosives. The whole thing was, it is as if you would have took munitions and then built the road. I'm serious. We had 13 IEDs in 5.5 hours at night, and we just quit, and all the vehicles left. That's what would have happened if more vehicles. That's why I can, knowing I didn't do the textbook, I can kind of live with myself. I have to throw that out there because there's a lot of prayer and thought that goes into that. So the smoke's off. I know the first thing I need to do is check on my guys, right? I try to look in the turret, try to spin the turret around so I can see Shaw. The turret won't move because his leg bone. I can't erase it from my memory, and I don't want to hurt his family by saying it because he's a wonderful man. His son is now grown, and his dad died doing exactly what he said he would do: support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. My driver comes to eventually. My gunner, John Scar, he comes to, and so then we're like I can't let him see it. So you start scanning for targets, which you should do anyway, right? Like we don't know now. I mean, if this is the time that people come for us, they didn't. It was remote, it detonated, and that had been their MO. We didn't see complex attacks. We weren't like at the city. We were blessed. But I was like, I got to get them doing something. And so I got them security, finally got the radios up, put in the call on the radio that we had an expectant, that I learned what that meant as a private in Ranger Regiment, that the battle captain didn't know what that meant and kept on asking me a status. And I said, if I have to say it one more time, and then we have to get Shaw out of there. He was a torso. And I had to tell John that he's got a chance. Like, he's got a chance. Because hope, you have got to give people hope in that circumstance. And so the ambulance, it will take over a half an hour. So we performed. We had minimal security, right? Just really one guy. John and I would go back and forth, and we would keep Shaw alive. And so after it's all over, all those vehicles need to be returned, and they're supposed to be cleaned by a specific unit they had over in Ramadi to do that. God bless those people. Talk about something horrible, but for some reason it didn't get done. And we had to go clean that vehicle. And so I didn't take any of my guys. That was the hardest day I've ever had.
Yeah, it's heavy, and I know it's not an easy thing to share or relive. I appreciate you telling the story in his memory especially.
I only do it so other people will too, because Mike, there's something therapeutic in doing it.
Yeah.
I don't do it for me. Like, you build community. Like, we're meant to be in community. Yeah. And if you think that you're not, you're wrong. You're not the 1%. You're not super exceptional. I mean, maybe that's why I came here today. I've never told a story like that. And maybe I just needed to. Right? And it's not weakness, right? This is like a form of counseling for some people, right?
For sure.
You don't have to have a degree that to know that you are probably not the best person, you meaning the I for all of us, that you are not the best person to be your own counselor. It makes no sense. That's an utter lack of humility, right? That you're the best person to advise yourself.
Yeah.
All the other people in the world, and you've picked yourself over anybody else to help you. Utter lack of humility, right? And I can say that with opera, right? We can be like, no, we can be tough about like utter lack of humility. But goodness gracious. Yeah, now finding the right people to help you, very important. Right. And be careful who you let in your team. But
yeah. Thank you again for sharing that.
Yeah.
Ultimately, after 20 years, you retired. How did you know it was your time to leave?
I knew at the med board it was time. If I would have stayed in the Army, not med board, my wife and I don't know if we would even still be together. I had made military service an idol. I think the other part, why is it so hard when we get out? Because we are so short-sighted. Right now, if you ask me, like, what is success? Success is being 70 years old and my kids choosing to come to Thanksgiving at my house. They maybe can't do it every year. I make all my decisions based on that. That's what I tell my Rangers our Rangers in transition counseling. And I tell them, I know I'm old, I know I'm balding, I'm getting a little bit fatter, not as strong as I used to be, but I can make decisions off that, what I do with my time. You know, how much money I need, how I invest, how I do, because that's the goal, is to spend it with my family and then want to. I can want to be with them. You don't get a vote in that game. So.
Yeah, I love it. You got the Gallant Few and Three Rangers Foundation. Can you tell us a little bit about those two organizations?
Sure. So, you know, I was blessed. Being the PAO, I had to work with all the nonprofits, right? And there's a lot of great nonprofits out there, but all about relationships. Met Carl very early in my time as the PAO, and he never asked for anything, which I liked. And then Three Rangers Foundation, that organization is currently led by Sergeant Major retired Michael Hall, who's a former regiment command sergeant major, United States Army Special Operations Command Sergeant Major, former JSOC senior enlisted leader, and the man that General McChrystal brought back to be his right-hand man after retirement. And so it was Sergeant Major Hall who took everything that we did with Ranger for Life and worked with Mike Allball, one of the RSMs who I was squad leaders with, to get our Ranger for Life policy is an official memorandum for record for the Ranger Regiment, which is just a blessing. So Three Rangers Foundation, very involved with Gold Star families, spouse education programs, opportunities, and then Ranger transition. And Gallant Few is really the down and in day-to-day support for our Rangers at Fort Benning. A blessing of Sergeant Major Hall is our organizations. We've got over 20 Ranger organizations. I think it's because we start as privates. Once we get out, we all want to be in charge, and starting a nonprofit, depending on your state, isn't difficult. He's done just the Lord's work in getting everybody to work together. So I don't have to have a scholarship program because we actually have a scholarship arm called the Ranger Scholarship Foundation, where if you give them money, they do the endowment, and then they award it, and they give you credit for it. Like this, the cooperation that has been forged in our community right now, like it hasn't always been like this. We're like in a really, really good place in the Ranger community.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
That's great to hear. I mean, it's certainly necessary. You were inducted into the Ranger Hall of Fame in 2024. Tell us a little bit about that. Where did that come from, and how does that make you feel?
Well, you know, not my problem that who they have selecting it. You know what I mean? I will tell you what, the thing that I think that I try to tell the younger folks about it, right? Because I feel the Ranger Hall of Fame is missing a ton of the folks who got out of the sergeant first classes and master sergeants, the E7, E8s who went on 12 to 15 consecutive years. So the Ranger Hall of Fame, I will tell you, is that it has both the combat, the leadership, and the leadership of the Army, but also very much cares about giving back to the community. Yeah. So I feel like I don't belong in it, but now I have it gives me motivation every day because I feel like I don't belong. Kind of like every day I got to put on Ranger PTs, same.
Yeah. That's a humble approach and certainly refreshing. Being among the first Rangers into Afghanistan after 9/11, looking back today, what do you hope Americans remember about that generation?
Rangers are always ready. The American fighting man and woman is always ready. And we will do whatever the elected politicians ask us to do. Vote wisely.
Amen on that. If you could speak to every young Ranger reporting to regiment tomorrow morning, what would you tell them?
You're going to get out someday, so enjoy today and plan for the future. Make Ranger Regiment part of your character. Don't make it your identity. Ask for help. Rangers lead the way.
Yeah. It's baked into your DNA, right? Rangers lead the way.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Annoying to others, but
No,
that's not our problem. No, I'm joking.
Well, no, I think, a strong and proud culture in military units is important,
sure.
And even in society for that matter. Looking at everything that you've done and where you're at now and kind of looking back, what are you the most grateful for?
My wife, relationship with God, the fact that God gave his only son to die on the cross for me, the fact that I can call on the Holy Spirit because Jesus said I could, and I believe that. It'd be very tough for me to live a life without that knowledge.
Yeah. So with the walk in faith, was the big paradigm shift when you read the New Testament on deployment, and was it at that point leading up to today where the big transition over being deeply rooted in your faith stems from?
It is, and I'll tell you why. And I'm not getting preachy to the crowd, but there's not going to be too many Christians who listen to this who will disagree. You need to be rooted in the Word. If you work out in the Word, your life will be transformed. The reason I know that is because that's what the Bible said. The reason I know it's in there is because the Bible's in there. The reason I know all those things is because I've read it. God gave you the playbook. You don't have to like it. Right? Like, you don't have to like the playbook. But it's his playbook. Like, if you got to say what the playbook is to God, he wouldn't be God. So read it, study it. And in fact, where you're at here, Dallas, Fort Worth, the Ranger Outreach Center is the name of the building that the military ministry has become. We see about 500. We host about 500 events a year. Over 1,000 different people come through that building for all things from transition counseling to Christian counseling. Our Bible study is rooted in Tara Lee Cobble's The Bible Recap. It is the Bible chronologically for a year. Not broken up into study, but you start reading Genesis, and before you're done, you actually go to Job. And then you figure, and I will tell you, we are on our 5th year of doing that with Rangers and veterans in Columbus, Georgia. After the first year, we're like, well, what Bible study do we want to do next? Overwhelmingly, no. We want to keep, no. This is our workout. This is how we start our day. We start our day reading the Bible because we're supposed to, being humble enough to know we're not as smart as a scholar, so listening to the scholar. And she is fantastic. She throws in, she's like our age, so she'll throw in like the little 80s and 90s references that we like for jokes. And when you can look at the world and how it is, and you understand how the world ends because you've read the book and it's not great, you don't get frustrated about that. When you see some people going through pain and you realized, whether you like it or not, that God lets people go through pain. Right? Not as a way for you to cope, but for a way for you to understand, when you'll start to see that most of our fallacy comes from trying to make heaven on earth. Never promised. Not a thing. Otherwise, all the disciples wouldn't have died. Anywho,
Yeah.
There you go. But yeah, so that's it, man.
Yeah, I appreciate the perspective on it, and really appreciate and value everything that you're doing now to give back to the communities. It's amazing work you're doing. So
yeah. It's kind of like the responsibility, though, right? Like if you get all this training, like you're a member of an elite team, sometimes, well, what am I supposed to do with it? You share it.
Yeah.
share it.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should have?
No, but I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What's next? What's the next 5 years look like for you?
For me, it's continuing to do this. This has turned into something that for me, kind of similar to you with military ministries and the two nonprofits that you're with, gives me a great sense of purpose and fulfillment, and being able to provide a space and a platform for not just veterans but amazing human beings in general, because it's not all veterans that come on, but to share their stories, ultimately impact our society, future generations, and give something back, whether it's lessons learned the hard way, inspiration, even connecting dots for resources for whatever particular thing they may need, it has been really life-changing for me, and so to me it's something I, at this point, legitimately feel pretty called to do, for the amount of, I think, feedback and messages that I've gotten over the years of people who are in a really dark place, but they listened to an episode with a particular guest, and that guest said something that resonated with them and even changed their life in some cases, in a number of cases, to me just gives me that feeling of again, purpose that just feels like it's way bigger than me, because these are people I've never met. I have no idea what their story is, and to read a message of somebody who said that they were considering suicide, but listened to a particular episode and it gave them, whether it's a different perspective or a resource, or just made them think about something differently, or gave them a reason not to do it ultimately, that's a heavy thing to receive, and it's certainly not something I take lightly or for granted, and so I want to continue to do that, and continue to grow both as a human, as a father, and really just try to be better at doing this, and provide people with even more perspectives that way that I hope are helpful. Beyond that, just not too dissimilar from your goal is just to continue to try to be the best dad that I can, and hope that my kids want to spend time with me also, because you can't force it, or you shouldn't force it. And I've been very fortunate and blessed, I think, with my kids, and that I have great relationships with both of them, and we enjoy spending time together and do often. So that's something that I value, really, really highly. So beyond that, all the regular business stuff, just, kind of continue to keep doing it and make it worth doing. Last but certainly not least, both enjoy life and grow in a relationship with God, and try to understand all of it better than I do now, which I know is a never ending journey, but I sure enjoy it. So that's the gist of it.
Last one, although this isn't my podcast. Do you have a favorite Bible verse? Does one resonate with you, whether you remember it exactly or not?
I would not say that I have a favorite. I mean, for me, one of the things I do, like, I'm very particular about my morning routine.
Shocking.
Yeah. And
you got to control the mornings.
Yeah.
The day controls you.
Yeah. I mean, it makes a huge difference. And so for me, part of that is reading different, there's 4 different books that I read. I start with, like, and even types of books, 3 of which are the same year over year. But so the first one is some sort of daily business thing. Right this minute, or in this chapter, I guess, I'm reading a Henry Ford book where it's just like a daily, I mean, no different than like a daily devotional, but for business. And I start with that because I like to end with Christ. But so I do that. Then I do a Stoicism, same thing. It's
Nice.
just the daily Stoic, because I do.
It's great.
I love that there are even a number of parallels between religion and Stoicism in a number of ways. But and then the last 2 are Bible devotionals. One that again, it's a daily one, not as popular. I can't even think of the name of it, but it doesn't even list the actual date. It just says the day of the year. It's like, day 214 or whatever, which does make it a little confusing to keep track. The last one is the Jesus Calling book, which I really, really like. And so to your question, in a roundabout way of answering it, I always read that, and I read it last and read it really, really slow, and usually 3 or 4 or 5 times. And it always ends with 2, 3, 4 scripture verses at the bottom of it. And I'll usually pick 1 or 2 of those where I'll actually open my study Bible and read the context around it. I'll read maybe a few chapters prior and after, and then also kind of the footnotes where it's, the collective author, scholar, theologian kind of summary and building that kind of modern day context around what it's talking about and try to understand it better. So the reason I would say I don't have a favorite is that it kind of comes in waves, and that, like this one really resonates for maybe a few days, a few weeks, maybe even a few months. And then I'll read another one where I'm like, man, I really love that, or that's really fitting right now. And so I'll kind of marinate on that for a little while. And so just with the seasons or chapters of life, it just kind of changes depending on what's going on and what I'm reading, digesting, how I'm feeling, et cetera. But
good.
Yeah. Well, man, it's been great sitting down, talking to you, getting to know you, and I can't thank you enough for coming and sharing your story with us, because such a remarkable career, and what you're doing now is such a huge impact, and all those years of different chapters within the military shaping your perspective on it and kind of what's important to you now, I think is just so amazing and refreshing, and I appreciate you sharing it with us.
It's a blessing to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
To the listener/viewer, I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't, you can choke yourself. And until next time, this is Mic Drop.